Right, it's made now.
Excellent.
So IFLA Europe can also say a word.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elzelina, for this. And yeah, I'm happy to welcome you on behalf of IFLA Europe. I'm so happy to see you all together. So yes, on behalf of IFLA Europe, the EXCO and the community, it's really my pleasure to welcome to this today workshop and seminar. IFLA Europe is very happy and is very delighted to see you all working together. So 9 national associations collaborating on this very important and crucial topic of energy landscapes. We think that for the whole community of IFLA Europe, so the all the member states and all the 20,000 landscape architects we have in our community, this topic is really, really important and timely. So that's a great idea to demonstrate the role and the capacity of landscape architects to work and to intervene on this topic and to develop and implement solutions related to this the energy question. So again, congratulations for organizing this 2 days workshop and seminar, and really looking forward to your exchanges and experiences in discussing and exchanging this knowledge. Thank you so much for this. And again, congratulations for this great idea. Thank you. Thank you, Elzelina.
Thank you, Didier. And now you take over.
Yeah, thank you, Didier, and thank you, Elzelina, for your introductions and your warm welcome. We're happy IFLA Europe is supporting this event, and also it contributed, I think, to the promotion throughout Europe. I'll briefly take you through the program for today, and also through a little bit of background. So let's start with that. The topic of energy landscape is really relevant today. You might even say it's hot. It has been there for, of course, always. Landscapes are, energy is always part of our landscape, but the scale of the renewable energy infrastructure has increased so much, and also the political ambitions have increased so much, given the climate crisis, the energy crisis we are in now. So there is a lot happening in Europe and in the world today. And we thought we need to keep educating ourselves and keep improving ourselves as landscape architects and as planners. So we thought we can learn from each other, and we can learn from others who are working on the same topic. And so we thought to start a network of practicing landscape architects, and start sharing experience. So that's what we are here for today. The main goal, as you can say, is to keep improving, and we do this by exchange and learning, sharing experience, listening, also getting other views, both positive and negative, and keep improving ourselves. Secondly, we also thought that such a network would help to promote the role of landscape architects in energy planning and design, and also in policy development. So advocacy for the role of landscape architects is really important. And also the second day, tomorrow, will be dedicated to thinking about how can we promote our role and promote our understanding, and also understanding of others for the importance of good planning and design in energy landscapes. So the project was initiated by national associations, mostly from Northern Europe. We say the Nordics and the Baltics, and supported by IFLA Europe. That's we have a focus on Northern Europe, but I'm really happy. I must say we're even a bit overwhelmed by the large amount of people that have joined for today. But I'm really happy that that we can also share experience and increase even the network beyond what we initially thought it would be. So that's for the background. You have all seen the program. I will not go through that in detail now, but it's good to know that we'll have presentations which each last about 20 minutes, and then there is room for questions. We have short breaks in between, and inform you also when we are going to be back, also for the people online. It's good for you to know. And for the second day, it will be a slightly smaller group with the partner associations, and we'll head for excursion in the afternoon. Just a few practicalities from my side. As Alina already mentioned it, the workshop is recorded, so it will also be available on YouTube, on IFLA Europe YouTube channel afterwards. So please share it also with your colleagues within your associations, with people that might be interested to watch the recordings of the seminar and the presentations. So we have one microphone in this room, which is here. It records everything, so try to be a little bit quiet. So 10 minutes questions, and we'll keep an eye on the chat. Actually, Emilia from Finland, who's online, and Taylor here in the room will keep an eye on the chat and raise questions if they come up during the meeting. So please write your comments and questions in the chat. In the room, please raise your hand, and you may have to come to the microphone if you want to say something. We have to see how that works. And also, you're most welcome to join actually on Zoom if you want to follow the presentation in the room. Just keep your mic and sound muted. So that's it. And we love to see everyone's faces. I believe we're part of a growing community of landscape professionals that is also increasingly working on this topic. So trying to build a network also helps to see you in real life. So please put your camera on so we get to know each other.
Yeah, we have a large screen in the room where we see also you guys online. So if you have your camera, we can see your face also. So it's me again.
Yes. Okay.
To get ready.
Just a brief introduction. The next topic for today, we're running a bit early, but I think probably just is roundtable. We're not at the roundtable here today, but we felt it's good to see what are the topical issues in our work today. What are the topical issues for energy landscapes? So there's two questions. Oops, this goes really fast. And topical means what current, related to ongoing events, news, things that are important or popular or problematic at this moment. So we've asked each representative, each from the national associations that have initiated this project, to briefly say, what do you think is the most topical topic in your country concerning energy landscapes? And also, what would you like to learn today or the coming days? What would you like to get answers for? And if not today, what answers do you need in your work? What can we actually solve together? And I believe this will also help us for tomorrow to think how we can contribute in a white paper or in a resolution the future and the continuation of this work. So let me give the floor again to Elselina, and she is our host.
Yeah, we
start and
we do this roundtable where all associations are going to express just the questions you just announced, and yeah, since we're the host, I start.
Yes, please.
I guess that it's one of the topical issues I can raise, and it's also only from my experience. But when speaking with colleagues, it seems like upscaling is the biggest issue in Denmark. Upscaling of renewable energy. A recently adopted proposal for amending Danish law on the promotion of renewable energy at large scale are actually changing the landscape today very fast. And in many ways, making smaller scale and citizen-motivated local production of renewable energy more difficult. These large investment support for wind turbines and solar panels, etc., are a good thing, but it seems like the other way around, which was more traditional in Denmark, seems to be more difficult. And what would you like to get answer for? I think we would like to get to know as landscape architect here when and how we can do upscaling of renewable energy production based on actual sustainable model, not the old school focus on only rentability and monoculture, which has already costed us and many species the use and the quality of our landscapes. So continuing with this model, the old model, with the so-called sustainable energy production seems absurd to me. It seems like we need to invent the model that fits nowadays and the requirements that the climate change and the biodiversity crisis is pushing us towards this energy change as well. So multifunctional and biodiverse landscape seems the key in the climate change agenda. So I wonder, what would it take to get our regions and countries to require by law or get some rules to save and develop the natural and cultural resources within these areas of productions? What can we solve together? Make a new vision of planning, I guess, that includes these parameters, learning from the mistakes from the old models, and seeing the potential in what the climate change issues are already teaching us. It's a bit broad, but that's what I hope for this meeting to help on.
Thank you. And next is Tele from I hope I pronounced it, or maybe I shouldn't try to pronounce the Eesti Maastikuark. Emal, is that you can say it's the Estonian Association of Landscape Architects. Tele.
Yes, thank you. It's Eesti Maastikuarhitektide Liit. The most relevant topics at the moment for us are the issue that we have a lot of species in Estonia. Probably the concentration is larger than, let's say, in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and some other countries. So we are really struggling with the legislation and impact for the birds. And one problem is that we don't have enough experts, ornithologists and bat biologists and so on. So those are like the main topics, also with the community development part. What I would like to sort of solve with all of us together is how to get the landscape architect into the process so that the impact is really visible, recognizable, and really working.
Okay, thank you. And next we go to Iceland. Björk.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not connected on the camera.
You will be, if you want to stand, you will be, this camera will take it. And if you're in the Zoom meeting, you may switch on your own camera, of course. But maybe it's easier for you.
Can you just come over there?
Sure, yeah.
Also for the microphone, it might be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I stand here?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
It's down here, so it will fit the
Sit
Oh,
down.
other paging.
So yes, I think in Iceland we have, or it's like a small island and we have a lot of energy production per capita. It's one of the highest in the world. But still, the island is small. It's like similar to Hungary, Portugal in size, and only like 400,000 people that live there. But the government is putting forward a scenario of increasing this energy production by 75% to get neutral carbon goals in 20 years. But Iceland has a lot of wilderness, and the hottest topic is that nobody wants to put the production in the wilderness, and the people of the country don't want the energy production in the rural area or in the wilderness. So it's kind of a problem where to put these energy productions. We have mostly hydropower and geothermal, so that's maybe a little different from a lot of other countries. We have started the wind production plants, but they haven't really built any big ones yet, but they will be a big topic. I think we have a good legislation and policy for environmental impact assessment. I think the role of the landscape needs to come in earlier in the policy planning, and there's a lack of documents for the baseline, lack of clarity from the government or the planning office in Iceland how to carry out landscape impact assessments. And yeah, so these are like the big issues, lack of documentations for baselines, and also from the political wing, like what kind of areas we like to preserve, definitely, and how we're gonna get, you know. But we have a lot of challenges. Weight criteria for assessing, consultation, I think, is a big issue that we need to address, how and where and why, and earlier in the planning process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Björk. I'll share my screen, please. Next for the roundtable is Latvia, represented by Indra. Something is happening on the screen. Is it my screen or?
It's
Oh,
sorry.
It's good to remember
Yes.
to
This
keep
away
it.
too.
Yes, so hello everyone. I'm Indra Purs. I'm Latvia. I'm president of Latvian Association of Landscape Architects. So in Latvia now it's quite a dual situation. We have quite similar, I believe, to the remaining part of the Europe. There is a big demand of energy, like this renewable energy development and these innovations of energy. And from other side, there was a big process. We were all involved in European Landscape Convention, in UNESCO protected landscapes. And for Latvia specifically is that there are part landscapes are protected. They are written into the legal spatial planning documents, but there was a fantastic process of public submissions and voting for landscape treasures. There are landscapes in cultural canon. They are just finishing a state research program for sustainable management and land use resources and landscapes, which one of the results will be a digital landscape atlas. And all this part is nowhere digitalized, finalized, regulated. And so these two processes doesn't match together. Now it's a big demand for landscape architects, which is good for industry. And I believe it's exactly what landscape architects should do, to act on these innovations, because this is only one type of innovations. And for us as association, it's important to work nationally on methodology on landscape impact assessment and some mitigation and design tools. And generally for this meeting, I'm most looking for specifically how landscape architects can make difference. So what is our professional role? So keep these borders with other professions and find our uniqueness. So thank you.
Thank you, Inda. Lithuania is not represented today, so we move on to Mark, Finland, and Sada will take the floor. Yeah.
Hello. So Finland, Sada Palmu speaking from MARC, the Landscape Architecture Association. So the most topical issue in Finland is, of course, that the amount of wind energy is increasing very rapidly, but also the size of the turbines has really increased. They are up to 300 meters now, the new ones, and it makes everything slightly different. The Environmental Ministry of Finland is updating the guidelines for the impact assessment in Finland. And this is because the current guidelines that are from 2016 are slightly outdated for the increased size of the turbines, but also they don't consider the offshore and coastal areas that well, and there are a lot of coastal and offshore projects coming up. The methods also are something that they are seeking to update, and that is a place where landscape architects really should have a contribution, and we are still seeking how are we exactly doing that. So what we want answers for is how should the increased scale of the turbines be handled, considered? How should the methods that we plan and assess the impacts of that landscape, how should they be changed through the increase of the scale? And also the warning lights, because it's very dark in Finland in the winter. So the warning lights are like every 50 meters in a turbine. And if you are looking for the accumulating impacts of several projects in the same region, they are really prominent in the winter time in the countryside. So we are especially interested to hear how different countries assess the accumulated impacts of several projects in the same region. And so what was the third question? I have the answer here. But what was the question?
What can we solve together?
What can we solve together? Especially how the countries make countrywide assessments. How do you compare different areas with different landscapes? For instance, Finland, Norway, and Sweden are super long, and the south of Finland is very different from the north of Finland. How do we as landscape architects somehow evaluate the difference between these areas? Yes, so comparing methods, principles, and guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Sada.
Exactly 3 minutes.
You were exactly in 3 minutes. Yeah, and next is from Norway, Anne-Kari Hetterud. Can I give you the floor? And if you want, you can also stand or just.
I think she's close.
You're close to the microphone.
Yes, I'm Anne-Kari Hetterud, and I'm representing the Norwegian Landscape Architect Association. In Norway, as in most countries, I believe there is an enormous pressure on establishing green energy these days. Onshore wind power is what gets the most attention in addition to offshore wind, solar energy, and also battery parks. Private actors are responsible for much of the energy development. They pay for impact analysis and preparatory work. There is a great professional concern that we are not equipped to cope with the large demand for establishing green energy, although the government emphasized that we shall solve the climate crisis at the same time as we solve the nature crisis. This may not be what we experience right now. The government see a potential for close wind projects, which is good, I think, and they want relevant close wind projects to be mobilized as quickly as possible. Today there are quite big conflicts with the Sami and reindeer husbandry and establishment of wind power and electrification. The population in general is also concerned about their local environment and the destruction of nature. This autumn there is a municipal election in Norway, and I'm sure this is a huge, big topic in the political debate. What would you like to get answers for? How can we use the nature agreement in the landscape convention in our work? What are your experiences on this in your countries? Do you have any good experiences on close wind projects and any success stories that we can learn from? And what can we solve together? I hope and think that our international cooperation gives us more weight in our argumentation with fighting for sustainable energy landscapes.
Thank you. Now we're moving online, and I'm checking if Nick can unmute his microphone himself. Nick Hazendonk from the Netherlands Association for Garden and Landscape Architecture.
It looks as if I'm unmuted by now. Is that? Yes? Okay, great. So I'm Nick Hazendonk from the Netherlands. Thank you for making it possible to participate in this meeting. About the questions. Later on, we will have a presentation about some of the things going on in the Netherlands and some of our answers up till now. But in general, I would say our problem in the Netherlands, maybe a bit different from many Scandinavian countries, is that we are a small country with a dense population. And then there you have, combined with this dense population, a high energy demand. So how you can develop energy landscapes in this small, flat country, that makes a big question, how to combine both, because green energy, as we know, is very low density energy in its landscape appearance. So you need lots of space to fulfill it. That's the first question. And combined with that, during time, we have searched for solutions. We have implanted many kinds of energy production, but we run into what we call net congestion. That's one of the problems at this moment. And then going more into the general questions and problems, I'm interested in how we can make this technical problem, both on the landscape side and on the energy side, how we can make it a cultural task. So how we can make it more than just how to solve the energy and climate crisis, but also realize as that it's about people, it's about cultures, and about design. So that's one of the questions, but this comes together with a thing that's running now in the Netherlands, which is called climate justice. So how can we solve this problem, but do it in a just way? Because everybody has to take his share, but how can we divide this in the Netherlands? A smaller technical question is now in the Netherlands, which is related to the net congestion. What about solar panels, solar parks in the countryside? So many people are against it, and maybe there will come a moratorium in some provinces. How to deal with that? Also something related to this cultural task. What do we want to learn? First, we want to learn about, in general, all the experiences in other countries where our profession is working. but especially we are interested in how to make this a cultural task and how to do it in a just way. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for joining also online. And finally, for today, there's Johan Folkson from Sweden. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And we have a presentation this afternoon. We will get a little bit more into depth in these questions. But overall, I would say it's you can summarize it as there is a duality around this question at the moment. On the one hand, we have a lot of experience and research and a good practice from very long-term experience, mostly concerning energy landscape from a wind power perspective. And we have developed methods to analyze the landscape and put this into practice when it comes to energy planning. On the other side, we see, as many of you also said, a growing demand for producing energy and distributing electricity, and the scale and the speed that is going on at the moment really doesn't take the notion of landscape into consideration, and basically one of the reasons is that we don't have a strong national planning or a landscape policy on a national level, but the municipal planning is very strong, and that is why, as we heard from Norway as well, that it's hard to balance between the need to produce energy and the need to reestablish nature, for instance. And I think that both the problem of this and the solution can be found in the landscape. So I think what I would like to come out from this, and one of the things that I would like to come out from this meeting, is how we can work more or better with the notion of landscape that is described in the European Landscape Convention, and how this could be implemented both on a national level and on an EU level.
Okay, thank you. This was what we prepared. We're running a bit early, so that's good, because it also gives us an opportunity to share experiences. And I would like to welcome anyone, either through the chat or in this room, if you want to add something, or if you have heard something remarkable. Also, if you have any questions, please just raise your hand or write it in the chat. And then we have around a few more minutes to talk about this. Are there any questions or anything remarkable that you have noticed in the introductions? Yeah, Anders.
On my camera. Can you hear me from here on Zoom? Yeah.
Yes, so people can hear.
Very interesting. But as I see it, there's we will return to in our presentation later on. There's some really important dilemmas. We touch a lot about on the topic of design for these gigantic wind parks. So it's the first one, obvious one for landscape architects to deal with. But this gets very close to the climate change problems, and the amount of the green energy transition is really a green energy adding up to the fossil fuel base, because we are increasing our use of energy, so we will not get rid of the fossil fuels. So at the same time, we will have climate change, which will increase. So there is also an obvious field related to the green energy transition where we have to work much more landscape architects in the future. And the real dilemma is to how to work with actually consuming less in the future, less energy and less resources. And that's a topic that we hardly touch upon, but would be very important for landscape architects also. The two first ones are obvious and wouldn't happen. Whatever we do, the third one is where we really should kind of engage in regenerative planning and design and other issues, which are much more difficult both to teach and to handle in practice. That's my fear and my dilemma. Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. This is very valuable contribution that before actually mitigating impacts of new infrastructure, we could start reducing and mitigating energy use. It's too obvious, perhaps, but an important task for everyone, including our profession. I would like to ask Taylor if there's any questions from the chat, and also Indra has raised her hand.
Yes, Didier has asked if the member states are understanding or taking account the European policy from European Union Green Deal, and how far are the national policies influenced by the European Union legislation. So has someone a good answer about this? Anyone wanting to comment?
Perhaps DJ, what is your thought about it? You're raising a question, but you have a good overview of what's happening in Europe as IFLA Europe.
Yeah, I have the feeling that we have on one side the European Union developing policies and legislation on activating renewable energies, and on the other side we have the member states with their own policies and own instruments. So is there a dialogue, or do you think that there is a dialogue in this direction between the member states? How far would they go with the renewable energies, and then developing these energies on the territory, right? And the other side, the European Green Deal, which is simply giving a lot of money for investing in renewable energy. So where is is there a dialogue, or is there? What do you think about that? Or is this simply separated? Which should not be the case, of course.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Sure.
As far as I know, in the Netherlands, the Green Deal targets, of course, are leading because we set them together and they are leading, which does not mean that we can follow all or we can reach the targets even. So they are leading, there is a dialogue, and it's not said that politically or in practice we are going to reach the target, because it's rather complicated, like my questions and remarks before. But this relation is there and the targets are leading.
Okay, Indra had a question.
Maybe not have a question, but some commonality. What I heard is one thing is speed, but another thing is scale. So we can't use because we had a lot of arguments in our country. Why do you need methodology? There are already plenty of methodology of landscape assessment regarding like wind turbines. Okay, solar energy is something new. So the issue is now that we, for maybe to put on the table for audience, I think it's important that because of the scale, we should rewrite methodology. And because of the speed, it's very hard to catch up. So this is major like topicality, I would say, common for us.
Thank you. Yes. So any comments on what Indra just said? I think Rosalina was.
I guess that the European deals are motivating each state to reach target, as Didier or actually Nick said. And in Denmark, by 2050, Denmark is trying to be energy CO2 neutral. So that's the kind of numbers that is leading everything. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about qualitative planning, but on the other side, on other levels at least, and governmental and European levels, we're talking about quantity. So probably that's one of the most topical thing I think in the general view is that we are talking two languages. One is quantitative, the other one is qualitative. At least landscape architect, we're used to talk qualitative. You're used to talk about the content of the landscape and the complexity and what is it made of. And here we're talking a different language of economy and rentability, which is important. It's an industry, but we're talking different languages. But none of us are here governmental mandated, so I cannot say at least what is whether the European Green Deal is actually leading policies here.
There is
Comments on that? Yes.
there is another EU instrument that demands, I can't remember the name, but it demands a landscape character assessment from every country. At least in Finland, that's the landscape regions that has been done somewhere in the 90s. And it's quite old, and of course it doesn't completely take in account the wind power, and it could be so that could be something that could be like something that is demanded from the EU and could also serve the transition in the energy landscape.
Definitely.
Okay. There were many topics raised already. Is there anything that you feel that we're missing or anything remarkable? Yes, there is two hands, please. I'm not sure if you can be heard.
Yeah,
but,
maybe
yeah.
For the sake of the microphone.
Just stand there.
Standing there.
Please tell your name.
Thomas from Austria, where should sit down, whatever.
Good to be here so people can see you.
Yeah, super, perfect. The problem is from the Austrian perspective that a lot of land, suitable land is getting sealed. Let's say parking lots, asphalt, concrete, whatever. Even we are called kind of world or European champions in sealing land. And that should be suitable land for agriculture. And the point is now when we are coming to solar energy, then it's so easy to use solar panels on agricultural land to talk about biodiversity, but not bringing into account that we could use solar panels as well on sealed areas, on rooftops, whatever. And then in the sake of quality, it's unfortunately easier and cheaper to put it on the land, on the free open space, instead of seeking for more complex solutions, which are maybe more efficient in the sense of less land use, but of course not having the rentability immediately. But that means the thing is we have a huge debate between economy and the quality. And I would say from our side of landscape architecture, we should not support the economical part, so to speak, because when we are debating on the open space, how we make a good design, already we are part of this economical system, and we should more urge and demand that everything that is in an urban setting, rooftops, sealed areas, should be more placed with sustainable energy solutions instead of just talking about the open free space or the open land, which qualities we should bring in, because there should be already kind of biodiversity. And it's kind of crazy that we're, sorry to say this, that we are trying to combine kind of solar panels with biodiversity. The debate should be somewhere else, why we are lacking of biodiversity, and now the solar panel should bring biodiversity into it. So that's a huge debate in Austria. We have less wind, to be honest, but that's a huge thing, and kind of we are lost as landscape architects because we are lacking about the understanding of energy systems. And this is what interesting. we are lacking in the debate where is the most demand of energy. That's in urban areas. Why we are putting some solar panels somewhere in the outskirts of somewhere somewhere in the middle of nowhere, because that's as well a strange understanding of energy systems, because renewable energy needs the production where the users are. So that's why we should be very aware of being, as a landscape architect, with whom we are making a cooperation, so to speak. So that's our debate, and yeah, whatever. Long talk, but yeah, that's what is really burning in under our nails in Austria.
Thank you, and also thank you for raising the Austrian perspective, living in Denmark, I believe. Is that correct?
Not really, but
okay.
Commuting a lot.
Commuting, okay. Yeah, and that's also about very much the matter of location, consumption versus production. One last, I believe Nick raised his hand, and then it's also time. And Nick, you also have your presentation right after the break. So if you can be brief, then you'll be the last for this this round.
Okay, thank you. I totally agree with the former remarks about thinking about this energy system. I will come back in my presentation on it. But yes, this also in the Netherlands. Also in the Netherlands is important, and but also there is a development direction agrovoltaics, so a kind of photovoltaics that can be combined in a sound way with agricultural use of open land. And it's interesting to know that in the European Commission on the moment, because of the soil directive, there is a development where we want to protect as Europe our open soils. So this idea to have no net land take in 2050 will come also into the debate, and that will say much about urbanization, but also about this soil covering energy producers. So that's and then the last remark is about, so we are following European rules, other countries also do that, but we have national targets. And at least in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, I think sometimes that becomes really problematic, because when we want to solve our energy demand with the density of people and the use that we have, it becomes almost impossible in some parts to solve that in our own country. So then you go back in this dialogue to Europe, and we have to discuss about which things can be solved on a national level and which not. We should have, for instance, 300,000 hectares more forest. But when you do that in our case, that's half of our open countryside. So maybe it's even economically more efficient to do that in other countries where you have derelict countryside, etc. But it's a national, international question. So this debate is also interesting, I think.
Thank you, and we're looking forward to your presentation after the break.
Thank you.
There has been a lot going on in the chat, and Taylor briefly will summarize it now, and then we go for a break. And after the break, there will be the presentation of Nick.
Yes, thank you for everybody who's been writing the thoughts here in the chat. Some of I understand some of you are here in this room, and some of you are online, but I will just reflect shortly. There has been this question about self-sufficiency. So like the question for all of us, if we should consider individually all the countries, if we should be energy self-sufficient or rather work together with on that topic. So this is one question for maybe further discussion, and also a notion about the picture that we have for this a seminar about the turbine in Copenhagen, which you have probably seen. Rune Kirt tells us to consider that we need 600 of that type by 230. So it's a target, as I understand.
Denmark.
in Denmark.
Yeah, if we would reach the targets given by Denmark for 2030, we will need 600 of these huge 250 meter high.
Yeah. And then there was some question.
Upscaling.
Sorry, Berg, I think it was you who asked about the sustainable certification.
Yes, I was wondering if any of you landscape architects are using a sustainable certification project, and what kind of system you're using? How's the experience?
Let's keep that question for
Yeah.
for the discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but
Yeah. Thanks. And this was really useful. I think we touched a lot of topics. I'm not going to try to summarize that now. Let's go for a quick break. And it says 10 minutes, but let's try to be back in 5 minutes so that Nick Haasdonk and Frank Stoeken from the Netherlands will present their presentation. Thank you.
Het geluid aanstaan.
Not to be heard. I was trying to say Nick and Frank Haasdonk and Frank Stoeken from the Netherlands. I can see you're already sharing your screen. Can we also hear you?
They are not back yet.
Yeah, they are back. We are ready for your presentation.
Thank you.
I can hear Nick.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are we about to start?
Yes, please. You can start.
Okay. Thank you again to invite us to your excellent Scandinavian initiative. My name is Nick Haasdonk. I do this presentation together with Frank Stoeken.
Oh, where's it? Give me the mouse, please. Yeah. Always technical. Yes.
So as I said, my name is Nick Haasdonk, and I'm involved in energy planning since 2004. I'm the IFLA delegate, and I worked some time on wind energy, for instance, with as assistant of the National Landscape Advisor. Okay, I'll show you some Dutch landscapes to get an idea about how wind turbines are realized in the Netherlands. So this is a smaller grouping. Mostly you see smaller groupings, and sometimes you have bigger configurations of more than 3 wind turbines like this in the Flevoland polder or at sea. Let's see. So as I explained, we have a small country and we have lots of population, and the landscape is flat and open. That gives possibilities, but also some specific problems. When you follow these Green Deal targets, then you see that we have the need for lots of space in 2050 and the time in between. So these are the numbers for 2050. It's not exactly to say how much, but it's quite an amount of our territory. Click on. Thinking about how to arrange this, all these hectares, indirect and direct use of space, I think you have to go really inside the energy system, not only looking at wind turbine supply, but also all other sources. So you have to think about demand and supply. You have to look at transport of energy, storage and conversion. Altogether, this makes up this rather complicated schematic energy system. But the message is that you really have to think also spatially and in a landscape way, how all these different potentialities of energy production like wind, solar, electro and heating, etc., are connected on the demand and on the supply side, and all have spatial expression. Go on. So what is our role? Our role is, of course, to make good designs, but then on every scale, not just on the project scale, and to make it on every scale, both for the infrastructure, for the receiving landscape, and for the technology. We as landscape architects can develop a consistent storyline to organize this communication between policymakers and public. And also, I think this energy transition has to become a cultural task and not only a technical task. And then dealing with landscape questions, I think, and energy questions, there are some rule of thumbs. So connect, when you look at the system, demand and supply as closely as possible to have a higher efficiency. And also to use low energy production for low value uses and high value production for high value uses. And we have to think in storage and conversion. And finally, in the discussion about wind and solar, the best, when you think simply and not going into much nuances, is to have a ratio, a quotient of 50-50, 50% solar combined with 50% wind. And as said before, very important as a landscape planner and always in this discussion is to start with energy saving. For every petajoule, for every joule we save, we lose the need for production of 3 petajoules or joules. And at the right, I show that we have to think about this combination of solar and wind, 50-50, as I said, go on. We work on all scales in the Netherlands. So many landscape architects and urbanists work, for instance, on national future studies, where we combine the discussion about climate, energy, and territory. These are both examples, post at Max 1, and the examiners with a group of people thought about this relation. The examiners comes into the equation of energy and space, which is, for instance, you see it there, kilowatt hours per square meter. In this discussion, he says, the divider here could be the landscape question and the landscape architect's task. And a reminder in this book is that sustainable energy is very thin when you compare it to fossil energy, and so it could consume lots of landscapes. The question in this book about landscape and energy was, what would the landscape look like if the transition to sustainable energy is realized in 2050? And again, they look at it at all scales, the European scale, the regional scale, and the household scale. Go on. All these national studies finally resulted also in an advice by the National Advisors on Architecture and Landscape. So they brought this future study via Paris, as an advice to the Ministry of Economic Affairs. It's a vision on the total energy system, not just wind or solar, etc. for 2050. It goes on the surface and underground. It deals with wind, solar, heat, biomass, and hydrogen. Go on. This is an example of the different difficult scenarios for especially the wind, but they did it also for the other functionalities. The national policy then is worked out on a lower level in so-called regional energy strategies, some 30 different strategies. An example for West Brabant you see here, and later on Frank will talk about the situation in the Green Art. Go on. So a big question now in this relation between territory and energy production is the problem of the net congestion of the infrastructure. So in general, you should have a strategy and think about where to place things connected to demand and supply. But the problem that rises in the Netherlands is that the production or extraction, not the input and the extract side in the infrastructure, or for instance, electricity, but also of other means, nowadays is congested. So your freedom in time and in territory are reduced. And we have to solve it by making new infrastructure lines, but that again is also a landscape question. With the general introduction, I think I go over to Frank Stroeken.
Thank you. Yes, you go around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. we're really shifting with our chairs now. Nick is in a little bit corner here to the next to me. I'm Frank Stroeken, landscape architect, working at the company Wing in Wageningen in the Netherlands. Company which is working on several sustainable nature-related aspects, mainly in the Netherlands and a little bit also in neighboring countries. I'm working on wind energy with ups and downs in investing since 2004, just as Nick, we just noticed. One of the examples of an advice which was realized is this curve on wind turbines in Flevoland, which you see down there. Adding to the presentation of Nick, this is a map to the left of the Netherlands where all the wind turbines are. And a little bit confusing, maybe you see to the top near Delfzijl, this is a concentration of really big turbines, and there are also smaller turbines scattered throughout the landscape. You have Flevoland, you have the sea. And what you see is we have mainly some areas which have already a history of landscape planning with wind turbines and building wind turbines. And we have many regions who are now seeking to also realize a specific target on wind energy. In the middle here, this, which is interesting in Flevoland, you see some lines which are built, and in between some smaller wind turbines scattered, they are being removed now to achieve a quiet landscape image. There has been a transition. We skip some and we build some new. Well, this is also a trend in the Netherlands. These small wind turbines, 300 of them give the same amount of energy as one big wind turbine. And these are the big ones we are building now. Not as big as you have in Copenhagen on the picture, but also, I don't know, 140 meters. I will now show you some results of a research which I have initiated a few years ago, 2021. We put 10 landscape architectural firms together to discover if we have a communal together a vision on, or can we mention some concepts for landscape planning for wind turbines. We were a little bit concerned to see that sometimes one landscape architect is skipped from a project and another one is coming in because he has another vision without really have a good talk about this in between landscape architects. One of the issues we often speak, this is a very old image, but the question is still very actual. How do you evaluate local and regional effects of the big wind turbines? To the right, these big wind turbines give, in fact, a much more comfortable view of the landscape because the wind turbines are big and above the landscape, you could say. But on the same hand, these big turbines are seen on a bigger distance. So how you evaluate this local and this more regional visibility of wind turbines? Well, a few lessons from our community of practice. We should find together a landscape where the wind turbines are fit in. It's more very general, so starting points. We should wind turbines. We should preserve differences within Dutch landscapes and fit in those wind turbines, enhance those differences. So seek how you could put them in. Now, for example, you can choose for this infrastructural water world and put there those wind turbines, but then maybe you should leave the shores empty without wind turbines. Choose for void and crowded. It's very simple lesson, but it's very hard to achieve. We have provinces in the Netherlands where they say 3 wind turbines together is a group of wind turbines, 3 only. While if you have to put in this region hundreds of wind turbines, you have really a scattering of many very small concentrations of wind turbines. You have to seek readable coherence in the landscape, how you can build logic in the landscape, reading of the landscape. For example, it's a little bit also enhance those differences and the diversity of the landscape. For example, follow a big dike with a concentration of wind turbines, but do it only when this dike is also really a big structure that has some logical relation with the big wind turbines that you put in. For example, which is done here in the northeastern polder in Flevoland. Choose for spacious size. Wind turbines are dominant in the landscape just to a large distance, onto a large distance. 2 kilometers, you could often say, are really dominated by a big wind turbine. And within this area of 2 kilometers around this wind turbine, you could make a concentration, and you should be aware that if you have a scattering of wind turbines, all those circles of 2 kilometers of dominance, you are spreading throughout the landscape. So another advice, make concentrations. Then another rule, reinforce the landscape beneath the wind turbines. And that's wind turbines, wind projects can give an impulse to landscape development. That is really a huge task, because often wind turbines are an infrastructural technical project. And when you add landscape development to it, you make it much more complex. But you also could build together with communities a story, a process of landscape building, which helps to get to make it an integrated landscape development. This is not really practiced yet. Choose height over lowness. That's maybe surprising, but in the what you see now in the Netherlands, that often communities say, we don't want too big, very big wind turbines. So we give a maximum size. Then this is translated into very big rotor sizes and a small, how you say it, mast in English, the pillar, a small pillar with huge rotors. So, and I will show it in the next slide. To the right, this is an effect. You have this rotor coming very near to the surface. People really have to, they behave as if they think they will be hit by this turbine, because governments, communities are scared for too big wind turbines. We say better choose for big pillars and go into the sky than that you stay close to the surface. Engage all experiences of the landscape in processes around wind energy. We often see that the people who live in the landscape, they can do their say on where the developments take place. People that travel through the landscape, and for example, people that are for recreation through this landscape, don't have this involvement. And on the same hand, people that are traveling through the landscape by car, for example, in the end, there are also voters for government, for province, for municipalities, that they will have influence there. So try to make landscape plans that are suitable for all people experiencing the landscape. This also mentioned by Nick, organized network efficiency and quality. This is a task which gets a lot of attention now in the Netherlands, and not very much by landscape architects, but mainly now by technical disciplines. I will show you now one example of the Green Heart study with a few slides. The Green Heart is
just a brief reminder. So it's 10:02. So if you could try to 2 minutes.
Okay, I will do it really short. We did a study now. We have just finished, looking forward to 2050, 300 turbines and 55 square kilometers solar. How can they get in this area between the big cities in the western of the Netherlands, which is a peat area mainly, and also some clay polders with different soil types. Around them are the cities of Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Utrecht, and Den Haag. We were looking for relations between energy and the underground issues we have, for example, CO2 emissions coming from peat, which are drying. How can we make some nice combinations of developments? And for example, we proposed to create big peat forests, wetland forests in areas which have now agriculture, milk production, dairy production, and combine these with big wind turbine forests and CO2 capture, in fact, within those forests, and wind turbines could be combined. This kind of images in areas where now cows are in typical Dutch landscapes. And another last remark, we have those polders which have which are very open. Openness we cherish as a quality, but when we have energy in those landscapes, we think openness will not give you the tools to create nice landscapes. So here develop this landscape also together with energy, and put in a lot of plantings, for example. These are two types of area of examples which make it more complicated the energy issue, but also can contribute to, well, landscapes which have more changes but also more qualities than only this energy issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and interesting to see that. I believe there's a lot more behind the slides, but because of time, we went through it quick. But it's interesting to see that the language actually that you're using is actually a design language, and is very much a landscape planning language for a new topic. Now let's take a look at if there's any questions from the chat or questions from the room, and please keep sharing your slides if someone wants to get back to some of the slides you have shown.
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay, there's a question for Björk. Can we hear you?
Can you explain a little bit about high value and low value?
Did you hear the question, Frank?
Can you come closer to the microphone?
Björk was. Oh, yeah, perhaps you say it yourself.
Yes, hi. I have a question for Nick. Can you explain the high value versus the low value? You talked about a little bit.
So Björk is asking, I believe, about the high density and low density energy.
Yes. So there is a difference between, for instance, electricity and charcoal burning or gas energy. So if you have places as industry where you need very high energies, very high calories, then it's not useful to deliver that by electricity. And on the other hand, when you want to heat your house, your home, you could do that easily with electricity. And so because every time when you go from one type of energy to the other, you have conversions, you have losses, etc. And you have this question of combining demand and supply. So I don't know the real exact English word, but high furnaces, this industry that needs lots of energy, it's better when you stop with coal or gas to go over to, for instance, hydrogen gas for them, instead of trying to do that with. It's maybe the same when you say, okay, trucks you drive with diesel instead of gas. So that's the idea. And so otherwise it's easy to move energy in an easy form around, and bring then high by high and low by low. It's also related to the question what you should do on sea when you have wind turbines, and what do you do on land, and how do you make this conversion or transport to the land. I hope it's more or less clear what I explained.
So you're not talking about a high value landscape and low value landscape.
You hear the question, Nick? I think he doesn't hear.
So you're not talking about high value landscape and low value landscape. You're talking about energy production.
Yes, I was talking about energy production and energy demand. So yeah, you understood the different thing, I think. So
thank you.
Yeah, the side is very much language. Also understanding how actual energy systems work. So that's one thing. Very technology dependent topic of energy, quite relevant. Any other questions? Yeah. So if you could come forward, just.
Yeah, I was wondering about the infrastructure around building when in the building period when you have to transport big building parts and the cars or the trucks that has to transport it, they are big, and the infrastructure for the roads may need to be updated to be able to transport, and also when it's built, when you are building in the natural area, how does it affect in the building period? Is there a big area that's needed while they are building it, and then that has to be restored, or is it possible to keep it very concentrated while they are building?
In fact, that's one of the issues, I think, from when wind turbine plants are being made. If the infrastructure makes it possible to put turbines and also to choose the height you want. I know some examples where trees have been cut in corners to make a curve, and they are later on they are newly built. I don't know many real problems that project did not. Well, sometimes infrastructural temporal solutions are built. They put away lighting poles, for example. These small scale examples I know. But often I think they are still in the Netherlands minor issues. Is this clear?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. It's 12 o'clock in Copenhagen. Is there any other questions, or otherwise, let's take a look at the program. We'll continue. 1 o'clock, there will be the lunch break now. We pause also the recording and hope to see you back in 1 hour. Thank you. Hi and welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good time to interact and to take a break. Let's continue with the afternoon program. We have several quite interesting presentations. And before we go to the discussion in subgroups, I first would like to introduce you Anders Lasson and Johan Folkesson. from Sweden. And the presentation is called The Green Energy Transition in Sweden and Implications for Our Landscapes. And you can take over screen sharing. You're already there, then I'll close mine.
Okay, how do take away
And drag it upwards.
Right. Okay, I guess this will be fine.
Hallo, ik ben terug.
Okay, welcome and thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to this workshop, giving us the opportunity to present the Swedish perspective. My name is Johan Folkesson, and I'm the president of the Landscape Architecture Chapter within Architects Sweden, and I'm also the head architect at the National Transport Administration in Sweden, responsible for planning of roads, railroads, waterways and air traffic, and responsible for building roads and railroads. And with me, Anders.
Yeah, I'm Anders Larsson from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Department of Landscape Architecture, Planning and Management. So I'm a researcher and teacher, and we'll talk a bit more about the course in energy landscapes later on. And I'm normally, well, I won't take my full CV, but I'm normally involved in IFLA more than IFLA, so I'm quite unused to IFLA community. But I'm also the IFLA's representative in IFLA school recognition panel, so I've seen some work from inside in IFLA too. And if you know IFLA, I suppose, European Council of Landscape Architects Schools, I'm part of the executive committee in this one.
Great. Okay, so talking about the energy landscape in Sweden, there is a lot that relates to the land use conflicts connected to the ongoing green transition. It's as Jurgen said, it's a hot topic, but it's not only the energy landscape and the production of energy that is discussed, but it's also like food production and forestry and water management and housing and everything that's need to be taken into consideration, obviously. And as I said before lunch, there is in Sweden we have ratified the European Landscape Convention, but it really hasn't been incorporated in laws and regulation, because it was said that we already lived up to what is said in the European Landscape Convention. And in line with this as well, we don't really have a national planning agency that can mediate between these land use conflicts, as we showed on the picture before. And as a tool or as a method, we have developed the analysis, integrated landscape character assessment, that is developed from the transport system, financed by the agency that I represent, but it is developed as a tool of knowledge of the landscape and participation in very much in relation to how the European Landscape Convention describes both landscape and participation. And it means to take this holistic approach of the landscape. And yeah, I won't go into details, but it kind of consists of these three important parts. That is the perceived landscape, the historical landscape, and landscape ecology. And the important thing here is that it is an integrated perspective. That this is something that that you do as an interdisciplinary collaboration with different kinds of experts and professions, but also with the people that use the landscape. And this is also developed from a regional perspective. And there are quite a lot of regions now in Sweden that has used this tool, but we are yet to have like a final image of the whole country. But that could be part of a development to have like on a national level, what kind of values do we have in our landscape, and how does the sensitivity of the landscape look like? And then we have a tool to better to make better decisions in this ongoing discussion of how to use our the land. But we're here to discuss the energy landscapes today. And first, we would like to emphasize that this is really not only about the production. So far, Yannick mentioned that this is a complex system with lots of different things that is usually the big built structures. Not only these things that produce the energy. So we want to share some experiences from Sweden. This is a pilot project building electrical roads. It's an ongoing project where we still try to figure out how we will build this. But the suggestion is that in the first phase we will build 3,000 kilometers. And it doesn't necessarily have to look like this. It could also be inductive electricity. So maybe we won't have 3,000 kilometers of roads that look like this. But there could be other parts of the landscape that is affected by such a thing as the electrical roads. And then we also have new mines, for instance, for findings for minerals for producing batteries, for instance. And this is several projects all over Sweden. This example is from southern Sweden. Just one example where the mine would use 22,000 hectares of now existing agricultural land and natural reserves. But there is also mining projects in the northern part of Sweden where we have indigenous people in Sápmi, where the Sápmi landscape is by nature very vulnerable and also not protected. And there's also I would say lack of knowledge about the Sápmi landscape. And then there is a lot of this large-scale projects that is kind of also everywhere in Sweden that is connected to the green transition. Could be industries where they produce batteries, or sites where you store the electricity. for instance, in northern Sweden, where we are planning to create green steel. There is a huge demand of hydrogen plants to make like hydrogen batteries to store the electricity from mainly wind power, and those sites are really enormous. They will take up a lot of space. And then this is, I mean, until now in Sweden, the energy production has been really built on plant power. So in northern Sweden, we have hydro plants, and in southern Sweden, we have had nuclear power plants. And our like electricity grid is built up on this plant power as a base power. But now when we transform the whole production system and put in a lot of more weather dependent small scale, so to say, power plants, there is a whole new situation, and this will affect that we will build out the distribution system throughout Sweden with enormous landscape impacts, and also with not very much consideration into the landscape at all. It's just here we really can speak of quantity, as Elselina mentioned before. But then I also want to stress that we are really not starting from zero. We have, at least since the 80s, the questions of landscape and energy has been very much part of the both research and practice. And we have a lot of accumulated knowledge. I just put in here a summary of a Swedish Italian perspective, kind of summarizing how the situation in Sweden was 10 years ago, and what we learned from that. But one main finding that is important to stress is that the landscape analysis as a tool is, of course, by building knowledge, but it's also very, very important for participation, not only with the stakeholders being the companies that are building the power plants, for example, but also from the people that it's affected.
Good, thanks. The first pictures I'm going to present are from our collaborative partners LabLab, a think tank in Stockholm, which has been excellent to cooperate with as landscape architects when you're kind of supposed to, with this new theme, to think outside the box a bit and not only within the traditional landscape architect box. We have, as a representative of LabLab, we have Ebba here today, and she's allowed to interrupt me anytime and say, tell you that I'm lying, or there's something extra I should say. And they have some excellent pictures illustrating the problems for us. And like in this picture, you can see the first one to the left. This illustrates that we have a kind of surplus now in energy in Sweden compared to how much we use, which will rapidly, the amount of our own produced energy will rapidly decrease, while the demand for new energy will increase. It will double until 2045. The less production of Swedish energy comes to such things as we have old wind turbines not being exchanged to the degree they should have been exchanged. We have water energy to a great deal in Sweden, and we have not maintained the water power plants as well, and they need more entertainment. And we have old nuclear power stations who will soon be out of production. And they are discussing now to have new ones, of course, but we are looking at a kind of situation where we're establishing a lot of high energy super factories in north of Sweden just because they're just now is a bit surplus in energy, but this will rapidly change, and this might dramatically alter the situation in Sweden and elsewhere. They also made this picture. Djurgården is a big island outside, inside Stockholm, where they have amusement parks and villas and etc. And the question we had before was about the ones who produce energy. And the places where we produce it is not where it is consumed. And there's a long distance in Sweden between production and consumption. And just for Stockholmers to be fully dependent on energy from wind power would demand more than 100 Djurgården, full of, as tight as you can put them, wind power plants. And but this is not happening in Stockholm, of course. This is happening out in the forested landscapes on the other valued countryside landscapes. Also, as you know, and we have been speaking about, it's not only the plant, it's not like a tree. There's a lot of big roads connecting the wind power plants and different kinds of energy stations. And the bigger the turbines, the bigger the radius of the curves and the bigger the roads, etc. So it's a massive amount of forest part which is disturbed by wind power. And also systems thinking is something we try to train our students in, not only thinking about landscape in traditional manner, but every time you use your mobile phone, which is a super invention, of course, you affect the transmission of energy around the world, the wind power turbines, etc., 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 and the minerals from Africa and so on. So it's really, really super connected. And I'll get back to this question about self-sufficiency soon. So ongoing collaborative projects we have within the university with LabLab and others, of course, is that we have now a master's course, Energy Landscapes. It's a general course in large-scale structures, EIA and landscape analysis, but we have the focus of energy landscapes since a few years. We have ongoing both research and research applications, one big now about offshore wind power planning and how to make analysis around this, for instance. And we have projects with LabLab in the Baltic states, for instance, new energy landscapes. We have been to Boden, where they have the new H2 green steel, H2 green steel project, for instance. And I'll get back to this one. The other two I will explain later on as well. So this is some examples from the course where multifunctional land use is one big issue, not to use, as we heard from Austria earlier, to not use only agricultural land, for instance, productive land, but make use of waste spaces and noise berms around railroads and so on to have solar power, for instance, like in this project, or make use of already disturbed environments like roads, motorways, and have wind power in other kinds of turbines than the traditional ones to collect wind power. Also, what do you call it now, Tobias? Agrovoltaics is a big issue also among students, and Tobias Emerson is here as an expert in this. And this is the big plant in the H2 green steel outside Boden. This is more than 500 hectares of wood which has been cut down just to build a factory. And this, as I got this made from Ebba earlier today, only producing green steel in Sweden will use as much electric energy as Denmark uses in total today, just to make the green steel in Sweden, as much as in total in Denmark. So talk about self-sufficiency. How do we count Denmark's use of steel in this balance? And then, for instance, if you have the world merchant fleet, if this would be electrified, they would need 800 full-size nuclear power stations just to make the merchant fleet around the world electrified. This is the project we're working with in Dalarna, a big region of Sweden, where there has been other wind plants in history. Now there's a new one with all of us engaged and some more. And the intention is to accelerate the production of wind energy. As I said before, we need to accelerate the production. We need to take care of the landscape values which are disturbed, but we also need to think in kind of saving energy and having a systems thinking around this. And this project, there's assessment of sensitivities and so on. And I'm out of time, so you will have to read this yourself. That's the final picture. Sorry, Gajan, we'll just, but we started 5 minutes later, so we had to speed up a bit. Yeah.
You were very fast. So
Yeah.
this is the last slide, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Then the floor is open for questions. Is there any questions in the room or in the chat? Yeah. No questions in the chat. Something remarkable or unclear? Did I lie, Ebba?
You were correct. I then put comment on this.
I'm not sure if you can be heard.
Try to speak louder. So I would put a comment on that. I think we are now talking about the big scale, but also you put an issue on innovation in street design. So it means that how this energy is transformed to electrical cars, these parking systems, this how much landscape architects are involved in electricity, like cable design or whatever, what we are putting on our like small scale solutions. Besides, so landscape architects, designers, can we make them more is in a sense of footprint more compact or whatever, some to this, yeah, I think it's also a good topic for our discussion generally.
There should be more, I think. I think we leave it to the engineers and technicians today too much, so.
Then I'm surprised that some refrigerator size stuff are appearing in our landscape.
Yeah, exactly. That's just like building houses and roads and streets and ordinary cities without having architects involved. That would be horrible.
But I think there are signs of this happening as well. Like maybe it's only a guess, but it seems that when the issues is getting more urban, then there is apparently a bigger need of getting the design of the aesthetics of these objects into focus. But then on the other hand, when we are more in the rural areas, less people tend to care about the design.
Question from Elselina.
You say you're teaching landscape architects, or is it a larger type of students, or is it mainly landscape architects that you're teaching?
I'm teaching other students, but this course is for landscape architects. Also international students take part. Yeah.
And I feel like your view on the quantity and the increasing needs of electricity just makes everything challenging. Do you see through the new generation and these visions maybe from the students or other fields or collaborative work on design, but also on other levels, like solutions or positive aspects as well? Because when I hear you say just to produce the steel, it will take the whole energy that we use in Denmark, and so on, and even further.
I think everyone, also the young people, needs examples like these just to understand what the worst case scenario might be. So this is because it's very hard to get all of these system approaches together in your head and understand the situation. But when you do, and I think the younger generation is much more engaged and interested in learning and doing things now than we were. They are really. I have children the same age as my students, and they are very kind of aware of a lot of the problems and really eager to learn. So
I feel like we tend to focus too much on aesthetic and how it looks like, but there's, as you say, a complex system underneath. And of course, it's a lot of engineering. So it's not about, oh, it should be us designing instead of engineers, but more like how do we collaborate? Because there definitely elements are not our fields, and we are a very small part of the. Yeah, I mean, that's why we are involved often at the end or too late or too early, but not really on the whole part, because it's not our main.
Exactly. That's one of my colleagues at a meeting at the department said that when we talk about like regenerative design and regenerative planning, he said that really landscape architects are just a kind of pendant to the industry. We're just helping the industry to grow. So we're a very big part of this growth industry. But what we really need is degrowth and how to handle this problem. And this is maybe something that landscape architects could be leading.
I think this discussion is really important because usually I think more and more when we talk about this green transition and what is needed, there is maybe technical solutions on the table. But really, yeah, the examples that Anders showed, but also other examples, tells us that this transitions will be really, really tough. And I mean, we really can't do business as usual because we need radical changes to meet this future, which we can describe, but it's really hard to visualize how what is the change that need to be put into practice for us to meet these global goals that we have on sustainability and energy production. So it's tough questions, and maybe the answers are even tougher, but we really need to discuss them.
We have, for instance, collaborative projects with 3 municipalities, with 3 universities and 3 municipalities working on things needed to have a transformative change, not only to have a kind of step-by-step change, because now we really need to change things over and to make municipalities accept this and to see that this is something it's better to do it deliberately when you have time to plan instead of be forced to do it later. But the municipalities are also, even practices, getting more interested in these issues.
Any other topics? Sada, Hilly?
Yeah, you talked about the role of the municipalities. You also have.
Can you stand up? So...
Oh yeah. You sorry, Sada from Finland. You talk about the role of the municipalities. Do you also have regional plans containing several municipalities? And what is the status of these plans?
In Sweden, we have a municipal planning monopoly. So we have plans on regional level, but they are not forced to kind of do anything about these. So we have a very strong local kind of decision center.
Thank you.
We do not have, like in Holland, like on 3 different levels. We have 1 level. So it's
right.
Except from traffic planning, of course, which
some exceptions.
Yeah.
Does that work with transmission lines? Is it also something on a municipal level, or is it considered infrastructure on a national level?
How it is, I don't know.
I would say national.
Yeah, I don't know really how in detail how it is regulated, but yeah.
We have 3 levels when it comes to transmission. So you have the municipal, you have the regional, you have the national. The national can handle it in the way that transport. Yeah. The regional and the municipal is it's more complex. So that's the
If you didn't hear, we have 3 levels of energy planning, both national and regional and local.
Is there any messages from the chat? No. Feel free to ask.
Understand anything?
I hope people can hear.
Too modest, I think.
Out in the web. It seems like.
Yeah. And that was really interesting to hear from your experience both in teaching, in academics, also giving the bigger perspective of the transmission that we're part of. And I sometimes feel that it's also comparable to the combustion engine in the 20th century, where we built roads and highways, which was considered something modern and new at that time. So perhaps the scale that we feel is kind of similar to that transformation that took place then. So if there's no other questions, let's move to the next presentation. There is one question. Okay. Nick.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I liked it quite a lot. I saw lots of parallels between yours and mine, but I had one question. Good that you make this analysis of the system with those handy phones and how it's connected to world's resources, etc. But do you also combine it with the system and the landscapes that are behind?
You mean within the landscape analysis, how to?
No, within your, I showed this inventory or analysis of R or general energy systems, demand, supply, everything in between. But what we also did, and maybe you have done it also, is to put the landscapes that are connected to it behind it. For instance, when you think of nuclear energy, this is not just the nuclear power plant that's in the landscape, but behind you have the mines in Australia, you have the mines in Canada, and these landscapes are connected with this production. So if you show the oil producing industry, the landscape that's behind is the desert and is all this kind of stuff, then people get maybe really a feeling what's the impact and how you can also work in a planning and aesthetic way with these impacts, because it's very easy to criticize the impact of a wind turbine, because you see what you get, more or less. Also there you have behind it aluminium and other resources, but it's more or less you see what you get. But with other energy sources like uranium or carbon, all these landscapes that are behind it are worldwide spread and not known and not in your direct. So did you do that kind of analysis also? I was curious on that.
I agree with you, but we haven't done such studies now, but we problematize such things and talk about them, but we don't have any specific research on this. But it's
I can share some material if you like it about that.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next speaker, because I think it's a nice linkage talking about technology and technology development and how they relate to landscape. Mats Luca Andersen.
Or maybe you extend, it's nice.
So we're very happy to have Mats Luca Andersen from European Energy, a Danish company, Danish developer, if I can say so. And you're head of technology development in European Energy. You're going to talk about multifunctional land use and renewable energy. Thank you. And
thank you so much for having me here. So I'm not a landscape architect, but as you said, I'm heading up technology development.
We're sharing it. Just press the green button. Sorry, now it's full screen.
So I'll try to press this one.
We're back.
Does it work?
Again. All right. So allow me just a brief introduction to European energy, and then I'll get into the multifunctional use. So we are an energy project developer, but we do everything. So we screen, we out talking to farmers about their plot of land. We develop projects, talk to municipalities. We make power purchase agreements. So prior to an energy park being constructed, we sometimes have an agreement already on who will buy the power from that park. Then we engineer and procure all the structure, the wind turbines, the solar panels. We manage to finance the construction. We divest them most of the time. That is that we sell our assets to a pension fund or some long-term investor. And then we are also a power sales company. So we sell power to the grid and that we have in our homes. And then we manage the assets over time. So it's really the full scale of energy projects that we have in our company. We are here globally, so concentrated in Europe, a Danish privately held company, but also have projects in Brazil and the US and in Australia. And we are a fairly rapidly growing business right now. So we have a development pipeline of 30-ish gigawatt, and 1 megawatt of solar takes up about 1 hectare, and 1 gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. To have some size on that. Right now under construction, we have about 1,000 megawatts, so that's 1,000 hectares, and we are around 700 people right now. These are 2022 numbers. We have a nice company parties. It's from last year in Lithuania. This is our sites in Denmark, how big they are and where they're situated. And the one called Tryggevelde is where we'll be going to visit tomorrow. It's here on the screen. So like the rest, we need to talk about some numbers. So the targets for renewables in Denmark is there's some numbers for 2030, and that's for PV, the solar panels. It's almost a 10-fold increase that is expected. That is huge. That's really a lot. And I think a question that always comes up when you talk about solar panels is, why do we need to put them in the landscape? Why don't we just place them on the roof and on parking lots? And that's a fair question, a fair assessment. I understand all the concerns, but the issue is that if you look at the expected build-out pace you can have within the different sectors, there's residential, commercial, industrial, and utility. Utility is a really big ones that distribute power to the grid. If you ask around what's your expected build-out capacity over the next years until 2030, then even if we're pretty generous to the private consumers on their own, then we allow them to build 70,000 private plants. And by 2030, that will then cover 1.2% of the energy need. So it's nice. Please build more solar on your houses. It's great, but it doesn't really solve the problem of the green transition. So that's why we turn to the utility size plants. So over here is a round ask to the different Danish utility developers, what do you expect to build over the next years? And there we have 500 plants pretty much planned, and that easily meets these 2030 requirements from the Danish government. And at the time of 2030, we will then supply 45% of the energy from PV in Denmark. Yeah, so that's why we are looking at big utility scale sites in the landscape. And therefore, of course, it's also very relevant to talk about how do we then ensure that they fit into the landscape and they don't cause a lot of harm. And one thing that we always do, and I'm not really considering this one of the multifunctional cases, is that we try to improve biodiversity within our sites as best as we can by all the little measures, like putting up bird boxes, planting the right seeds, allowing for fauna passages and stuff like that. So this is something that we have a lot of focus on, and more it's a requirement from the municipalities we talk to. I brought these pictures for the plant belts that we have around our sites. A very nice case, of course, is if you can find some old wood that you place it in, because then it's completely shielded from the outside. You don't have to look at the technical structures, but that's normally not the case that you can find a slot like that to build in. So we normally plant belts around the PV parks, and then it takes years, of course, for that to be big enough to have a proper shielding. And here are some examples of what it looks like after 2, 3, and 5 years. But I want to get to this. So this is what I came to talk about. It's the multifunctional land use within PV. And there's 3 cases that I will go into. And the last one is the one I want to spend my time on. The first one is a groundwater protection. Then we have something about low-lying soils. And then there's agri-PV that was also mentioned by a few already. The groundwater protection is fairly simple. When you have agricultural practices across an area where you have groundwater interest, you want to use that water as drinking water, then you very much like to stop the agricultural practice to not have fertilizer and other things seeping into the groundwater that we need to drink. And one way to ensure that is that you can build solar parks that are not polluting the underlying water in any way. And the farmer is then still compensated for his lands, because there will be a land lease with a solar park developer like us. So that's a very simple one. Then there is the concept of low-lying carbon-rich soils. And here is a case of a project that we are going through the paces right now with approvals. It's 170-ish hectares. It's in Jutland, and it's a lot of land that is lying down towards it's not called a river, an å in Danish, a small creek. And a big chunk of this land,
Maybe if you want to point,
Oh,
you can
point.
use the mouse so the online
Yeah, sure.
people can see.
Yeah, so the big chunk of the land that is lying down here to the south is this low-lying carbon-rich soil. So we are very interested in trying to build this project, and what you can see here as well is that there is a lot of landscape initiatives as well. There's a fauna passage to allow animals to pass through the site in the middle. There is like a series of walkways down towards the creek for access for the public, and then there's a lot of trees being planted around to shield it in properly. So the low-lying carbon-rich soils is about 7% of the Danish agricultural area, and the very interesting thing is that the cultivation of these carbon-rich low-lying soil constitutes about 50% of the agricultural CO2 emissions. So it would be very nice and pretty obvious to stop doing agricultural practice on those lands and lock in the carbon in the soil. And one way, again, to do that would be to deploy PV. And the tricky thing is that these low-lying soils, they are drained to allow agricultural practice. So what we need to do is to stop that drainage and increase the water level, and then you can preserve the carbon in the soils. And again, in order to make the economics work, one way to do that is by having it in a land lease and build solar on top of these lands. It comes with some technical challenges. It's not easy to build solar on wet lands like this, but it from a CO2 perspective, it makes a lot of sense to go in this direction. And then I want to talk about agri-PV. So agri-PV is this general concept of doing both agriculture and energy production on the same lands. So it should be compared with a mono use of the land. So to the left here is shown a pure 100% solar park, south-facing fixed tilt solar panels, and 100% agricultural park. And the idea in agri-PV is that you do the same thing, do two things on the same land. So in the case shown here, then we have a significant lower power density. We built a tracker system that leaves space to have agriculture. So it's only 67% of the power density, but the amount of kilowatt hours we produce on the land is reduced to 80% because the trackers are more efficient. They follow the sun during the day, so they make more kilowatt hours per panel installed. And then, of course, the big question is, what is the expected agri yield in that kind of site? And it's a nascent field. There's project sites around the world that are trying to investigate this, but the expectancy is somewhere from 60% agricultural yield up to 110. And the whole point here is that if you add these numbers up, I mean the 80% energy density and let's say 80% agri yield, then you get to a land efficiency of 160%. So you make more of the land than you would if you had them next to each other, both of them. So this is, of course, a very interesting concept. And I think it warrants just a little explanation for why it could work. So when you have agri-PV and plants, PV panels and plants on the same plot of land, you make a microclimate. And the plants themselves, all of them have a growth curve, like the one shown here, center top. It shows the photosynthetic response rate to light. So how much does a plant grow as you increase the amount of light that hits it in a day? And they all has this quenching effect where they grow in the beginning and then they kind of stop growing. So if you have a plant that is having more light than it needs, then you can easily steal away a lot of the light and it will still have the same growth response. The second curve is showing the temperature response to the photosynthetic rate, and plants are a little bit like us. They don't like it too hot, they don't like it too cold. So if you are in a very hot climate, then there's a growth benefit from moving to a colder climate that you have within this PV park, where you have all this extra shade from the solar panel. So there is a potential to have a an increased growth of the crops that you have underneath. And The three plots at the bottom here is from a nature paper from Arizona. That is a very hot climate, just showing that it actually works. The leftmost plot is the photosynthetic rate throughout the day. And in the open system, you see that the plants take off. In the morning, they grow a lot. But by the time they hit midday, there's no more soil left in the ground, and they simply stop their growth. Whereas the shaded system, they go at a little bit lower rate, but they go throughout the day. So we end up with a higher plant growth result. Of course, Arizona, special case. It's not Denmark, but that's the concept. So agri-PV, there's many different takes on how to actually build this. So here are shown, I think, the three dominant ones. The first one is high over. You raise everything up to above 5 meters, so you allow agricultural machines to pass underneath. Then there's vertical rows, which seems very attractive because it's very clear where the farmer has to go with his machines, and there's no conflict of any kind in the space. And then there's these the big 2P trackers, which is our favorite, that allow for a better energy density in the field, and thereby also a possible project economics. We find the first one too expensive, and the second one too spread out. So here's some visualizations of the different concepts. So to the bottom is the normal, is what you see in the landscape right now, is fixed tilt south facing panels, and they are built quite dense. You allow about 2.5 meters of distance between the rows, and you need that for access for service and stuff like that. Then you can replace that with trackers. So that's the systems that follow the sun, and they are naturally built more spread out, because you want to avoid that the early morning sun from casting shade from the first row hits the second row. So they need a bit more space between them to be efficient. And then there's the agri-PV case, which is the same as the tracker, but scaled up, so that the distance between the rows come up and be comparable to the size of conventional farming machines. So what we're looking for is in the order of 13 meter row spacing, because then you can go in with 12 meter machines. Okay, and here's a nice visualization that Rune has helped us with. 2 minutes, perfect. I have one slide on economics. I will not go into it, but this is the reality that we live in as a project developer, that we really need to find the right compromise between energy production and area consumption. Agri-PV is a hard case. It needs to work for the farmers. We need to have it working on a crop that is grown at scale. If it only works on blueberries, great, but I will never really do anything to the green transition. Then it needs to have a sufficient PV yield. We need to have proper project economics. And then I think also very important, we need to have social acceptance of this. It's bigger structures, they take off more room in the landscape. And then there's obviously a lot of technical challenges as well. Very last point here. We have a project that we have landed together with University of Aarhus, University of Copenhagen, and the Municipality of Slagelse to build a 2-hectare agri-PV demonstrator of the 2P kind. And it's going up these days. They are raising the structures, and it's very exciting. And the point of this 2-hectare site would be for us to understand what is the crop impact on the energy production, and from the university researchers in Aarhus, the other way around, what kind of crops can we expect to thrive growing in this shade, and how should we cultivate them to make it work. And in this system, we also have 2 meters of flower rows down under the trackers to be a natural habitat for pollinators and predatory insects, who can use less herbicides in the field. And all of this, we spent the next 5 years investigating and hopefully learn a lot. And then we have hopefully a scale up on the way. We have a 100 hectares project that we hope to build in 26 of the same technology.
26.
Yeah.
Thank you. And right on time, yeah. It was very interesting, and I can imagine there are some questions or comments. I saw some in the chat. Do you want to read those first?
I'm thinking maybe Nick should do the discussion himself. Or
Okay, I'm not sure everyone has is following the chat, but
Okay.
there were some comments from
We can
Nick.
read it
from
out because
yeah.
Nick is not responding.
Yes, I'm here.
Maybe you can read it out.
Yes, so it's not so much questions, but more saying that those solutions.
Here, Nick.
Yes.
We can't hear
him.
you.
So Nick, you were commenting in the chat. Do you want to?
Somehow our speaker.
I think we have a problem because of the TV.
Okay, but then I will.
Okay, Tele will read.
I will read them out. Yeah. So Nick is asking about the subsidizing system about putting solar on the agricultural land. Netherlands have it, but they want to change it because it's not supporting probably it's not supporting the agricultural part. So maybe you can comment on that.
Yes, so I don't know the specific of the Netherlands, but throughout Europe right now there is a lot of legislation going through the system on agri-PV and the requirements for it, and it's on specifics of a needed crop yield and needed PV coverage that you need to live up to both. It cannot be just a few solar panels in the corner of a field, then you can get agri-PV subsidies. You need to have both at a significant scale. But if you then live up to those requirements, then you have access to help. I know in Italy they have an easier application process. So if you have an agri-PV project, you can get quicker through the whole municipal approval system. And then if you have some special monitoring initiatives in your site, then you can also get some subsidy schemes. But we are not normally building in any subsidy schemes. I mean, we are a private commercial player, normally doing it without.
But my question, sorry,
commenting or saying that he would like to know about this. How is it successful when we're talking about the soil quality, and is it more problematic or not if you have some success in this field?
Yes, so it's end up being a very climate specific where and how well it works. So when you go towards the down south in Europe, it's going to be great. There's a lot of the crops that will thrive in our end of Europe that will do perfect under an agri-PV site in mid-Germany or something where it's a little bit warmer and hotter. So it's hard to say, but you shouldn't take the worst soil and do this on. I mean, you need a good agri site. So the point is that you have both here. You have still your agricultural practice and you have energy production. And towards the south, where you have heat waves and lacking water, then there's also the benefit that you retain moisture in the ground longer.
So anyways, some of the chat also tells that in the southern countries they are also using this shading, but it has been like for ages read maps. So the Arizona case that you were explaining is probably working in southern countries as well. Yeah, we need to understand if our online.
Yeah, we have a problem. You cannot hear
They can hear us. We cannot hear them because
we'll look at it in the break.
Yeah, we're solving that in the break. I have a question.
Sure.
Is this a special machine, the in between solution you were showing, where it was more 5 meters between rows? They are like
Yes, so you can
kind of technology.
You can of course farm that space as well, but it just ends up not being practical. I mean, you're not gonna get a farmer going around in small pitches. So the farming machines have been growing and growing
Yeah.
to make farming more and more efficient. But there is a different trend right now, and then that's robotics. So you have like autonomous agricultural machines that then you could start to argue for the smaller row pitch again. But I think my perception of the bigger structures, bigger row pitch is actually that it looks much nicer when the panels turn midday. Then everything is up in 2.5 meters height, and that means that if you stand in the field, you can see a long distance, whereas the small trackers, then your view is blocked by the structures.
Okay, so the larger scale also for the machines is
Yes, so
working better.
I think so. From a visual perspective, I think it's nicer to look at. I think the challenge is that the tip of the structure, when it's turned towards the morning or afternoon sun, is at 5 meters, whereas the normal systems will peak at 3 meters. So when we talk to municipalities, we need to ask them, is it okay with this project site? And there'll be like a 5 meter structure. And then the trade-off will be, do you allow the 5 meter structures against this less dense built field that is perceived more airy? And I think that's one of the learnings that we want to have by building this first site, is that be able to take people there, show it, and have discussion on what does it look like.
What kind of crop are you going to make the experiment on? Is it potatoes, as we saw on the...
Yeah, so we've done one on potatoes at a different site that actually was quite promising, but there's a list here of the first crop rotations that we will test. And it's a 5-year program, so we do have chance to update and get wiser during the program, but you do need some time when it's agriculture, because you need growth seasons to assess how well it works.
Last question is like the agricultural practice itself, like allowing ploughing or not, which is also CO2 releasing, for example.
Yeah.
Or is it also kind of stimulating another way of doing agriculture that is also more sustainable?
So this doesn't need to do that. So here you could do conventional farming if you want, or you can do ecological
permaculture.
Yeah.
Conservation, actually.
Yeah, so you can do all those. It's not restricted to any of them.
Okay, so it's not like kind of changing completely the way of farming.
No, not by its own right. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to do organic farming in a site like this, but we also need to figure out what works.
Well, organic farming actually asks for more machinery to go through.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of questions, one in the chat, and then Björk and Anders, and then we'll go for a break.
Yeah, in the chat there was a question about the size of the park, if it differs, if it's normal one or if it's the agri PV. Does it take more space?
Yeah, so it's less dense. So it's about 80% of a normal PV park, the power generation per area.
80%.
80%, yeah. So you need more space if you want to produce the same amount of power.
How do you handle the planning land use? Is it like as for industrial, or is it industrial slash agriculture, or how is it?
So this is on farming land, and I think we are.
Repeat the question because I'm not sure if it's heard by everyone. So you're asking about the planning, if it's the same procedure.
So how is the land analyzed?
Okay. How is the land use analyzed in the planning procedure?
Yeah, so this is not my specialty within European energy, but my understanding is that in Denmark we are allowed to build on farmland. We don't need to reclassify it to industrial land or anything like that. So it will remain farmland. It will also be remaining as farming practice. So I think that makes sense.
In Sweden, we have like 100,000 hectares of industrial land with almost no solar panels on it. And putting solar panels on this already disturbed land instead of agricultural land would have 100 in Sweden, where we need the sun a lot. We would have a 100% production of farmland products. We would have 100% increase in solar power, and we would have, like if you have it on parking lots in the cities, you would have a decrease in urban heat islands in summertime, etc. So this would be a much bigger invest. As we talked earlier with the Austrian example, I know that for farmers this is really great to have a better economy and so on. But if we went for the landscape issues, the kind of best multifunctional use instead of the economy.
Yeah.
Is this still the best idea, or do you have other projects in your pocket?
So I think one very nice thing about this that I don't think I mentioned is that if you do these two things, if you acknowledge that you do need these big PV parks to bring down the cost and build at scale, and you acknowledge at least in farming to have local food production, then placing them together will basically release another area somewhere. Of course, that will not be our control as a project developer, but it means that you have a similar sized area available for biodiversity somewhere else. I think that that's really a nice plus, that you can do more with the same amount of area, but depends very much on what your situation is. I mean, if you're in Holland, you don't have a lot of farming area. But in Denmark we have tons.
So this was really interesting to see in the mind and in the practice of a developer also working on new concepts. And I think also for many of us, interesting to see how you approach this also from a business case perspective and the steps you need to take. Let's go for the break. We have a short break now, a bit less than around 10 minutes, and then we continue with two presentations from Denmark. Thank you.
I'll try to solve the issue with the screen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Let's continue with two interesting presentations, both from Denmark. I'll briefly introduce, this is not the right slide, I'll briefly introduce Anka Nordviksson. I hope I pronounced your name well. Landscape architect. You're going to representing Bornholm's Regionskommune from Denmark, talk about planning and impacts from municipalities, the energy island Bornholm, which is very interesting and topical case. And after that, we continue talking about conceptualization and visualization of energy landscapes. And we have Rune Kirt from Kirt and Thomsen, I pronounced it well, showing some inspiring examples of visualization and the role of conceptualization in design. But first, Anka from Bornholm, the floor is yours. And
thank you.
You need to share screen.
Thank you for inviting me. I work as a municipal planner at Bornholm, and I'm here to tell you about the energy island, the project Energy Island Bornholm. And the project was initiated by the Danish government. The Danish government decided in 2020 two energy islands, one in the North Sea and one in the Baltic Sea. And in the North Sea, it's an artificial island that they want to build, but in the Baltic Sea, there's already an island. It's called Bornholm, and that's where I'm from. And the project in the Baltic Sea, it's planned to have an effect on 3.8 gigawatts. I guess you can figure out that it's the eastern one. So what is an energy island? It consists of wind turbines offshore, big wind farms, and cables to the land, and a high voltage facility on land, and then distribution cables on a long distance to other countries like Germany and Zealand and the rest of Denmark. And it's a new technology because this high voltage facility has to transform or convert the electricity from DC to AC. I'll explain a bit more about it. But what does it mean to Bornholm? Yeah, first of all, it means a need for onshore technical installations, cables coming in and going out again, and this huge high voltage facility.
which functions as a hub that receives, converts, and sends off electricity. But it's a huge investment in this place. So it's also regarded as a possibility for development for Bornholm. And I'll come back to that. But first of all, I'll go further into the project itself. So the wind farm is going to be located in these blue areas, south and southwest of Bornholm. And the edge is 15 kilometers away from the coast. But the wind turbines might get a height of 350 meters. So it will be very visible from Bornholm. And then this facility for converting the electricity is also, it consists of a whole complex of buildings. The electricity goes in at the eastern part into rather small buildings, and then the building scale goes up through towards the west of the facility, and it's huge. It's a strange scale, really large scale. The buildings, the most western buildings are like 45 times 105 meters and 25 meters tall. So the footprints are quite large. Yeah, the electricity is, as I said, transformed from AC to DC. Maybe I said it the other way around, but at least it's for the electricity to be sent at a long distance. It has to be converted from AC to DC, because DC does not have as much energy loss when it flows on a long distance. The whole facility takes up 50 hectares or acres for the technical installations, and then at least 50 hectares for the landscaping around it. So we've been looking together with Energinet, who's going to build it, for a rather flat terrain, a space with as few housings as possible, and a space that's close to the coast because it has to be connected to the offshore turbines, and of course also a place with as few nature and landscape values as possible, amongst other things. But so many things to take into account when you look for a place for this. Just a short introduction to the island and the landscape. The main city is called Bornholm, and it's the one with the red circle. The northern part of the island is a rocky landscape. In the middle of the island there's woodlands, and in the southern island is sand and sandstone, and a little more flat than the other. Just to give you a sense, I've brought you 3 pictures. So this is from the northern island, and the woods, and with these rift valleys. And so from the south with the white beaches and the openness. Together with Energinet, we identified this space. It's 2.5 times the space that was needed, but in order to assess the location and the landscaping, we did it for a bigger space than needed. And the landscape is defined by agricultural land use, and then there's this line, maybe I can show here, a fine line of vegetation, and it's actually a stream running in a rift valley with trees around it, breaking up the landscape. And also here, there's a small stream, and actually also here, over here, the same. And the middle of this landscape was historically a wet meadow, so that's why it's also rather flat. But the water has been drained for farming. Yeah. So in the planning process, Bornholm chose to influence the project by saying yes to do the planning. Otherwise, it could have been the government, the state, that did the planning. But for Bornholm to influence the project, we said yes to do it. And of course, landscape and architecture are key issues for us. And so we proposed to Energinet that there should be an architect competition in order to ensure that that we got a proper project with a nice architecture. But due to the time frame and due to the complexity of the technical installations, we agreed to instead do a public workshop. And Energinet also agreed to hire external support, or like a kind of judges, an experienced landscape architect and an experienced architect, on the recommendation from the Danish Association of Architects. And they were participating in the workshop and commenting on the design process. And this is from the first workshop. Arkitema was facilitating the process and the workshops. And this is an example of how they exhibited the sketches for how to place and form the facility into the landscape. And the participants in the workshop could comment on everything they showed in order to like or not like, or to qualify the next step. So in the next step, workshop number 2, again, there were some proposals, examples of how could the concept be for placing and forming the facility. And again, people could interact and with everything. Also, there were proposals for the design of just both forms and facades to these buildings that definitely will be visible in the landscape, and hence a kind of a landmark. And there are different concepts in these examples. Yeah, I guess you can see the forms of the buildings, but also about the landscaping. And the picture on the bottom, it's the concept there is to open or to split the facility in two areas and make a corridor for pedestrians and for the water flow, and actually trying to reinstall a kind of a water element. Yeah, and that's what that's the one that's kind of one, or yeah, that we are working on to implement. But also on a larger scale, the project means something to Bornholm on the society scale. Actually, Bornholm municipality is rather poor due to the demographics. The municipal budgets requires less spending, so we have to do something about that. And so we're hoping that this project can mean job creation, local business growth, educational development and research, test islands, and also to attract new types of businesses, power tricks, and all in all, turning Bornholm into a green business beacon and transport hub for green fuels in the Baltic Sea. And to let this opportunity be a kind of a turnaround for the economic, we hope so. Yeah. So this is the latest layout, and it's the last slide. So do you have any questions?
Thank you. Right on time. It was an interesting and also very topical discussion, very different from what's happening in the North Sea and discussed in other parts of the world, because it's on an existing island. So
Yes.
yeah. I can imagine there's questions, or in the chat perhaps.
Not in the chat.
Not in-
I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Yeah, I was interested about this topic that you said that you want to develop the community of Bornholm through this project. Can you maybe give a little bit wider view? What are the aspects that are going to promote the community? Are there some specifics?
Well, Bornholm is known as a tourist island, but also known as for the green transition. So we are trying to do this green transition and make a development out of it. So it's we want to do like green lab skill and energy and what's it called, like for different businesses to cooperate. So one has make wind and hydrogen and heat, and another business utilize heat to make something else. And so it's kind of a ecosystem of exchanging resources from each other. So a business park doing this. That's kind of
the vision, the dream. But already all the offshore wind farms are resulting in growth in the harbor of Bornholm. They are extending and so they can ship out elements for the big wind turbines in the Baltic Sea, and not only for this project, but for all the projects in around Bornholm. Yeah. So but there are many sub projects in it.
Question from Elselina.
Yes, I was wondering, because talking with people from Iceland or north of Finland and areas where landscape value and natural values is very high, like in Bornholm, where the nature is very specific and very high valued. Other places we see this kind of development growing like a threat, and you see it as an opportunity. How do you balance these two businesses? Because the natural values are also bringing the tourism, and so how do you see these two? But I see that you work a lot on the quality of this installation. Is it like a municipal or regional planning policy that helps you keeping an eye on that, or is it some individual political initiative, or how is it working?
Yes, of course, the identity of Bornholm is the landscaping and the nature. So we are very keen to maintain all these values. But then again, it does not mean that we can't have development. So we just need to put in a lot of effort and to make, for instance, this facility a good example that integrates with the landscape and gives back nature and quality. And in fact, the tourism organization think upon this energy island as a brand for another kind of tourism. So we get delegations from all over the world to come visit Bornholm in order to watch and learn from Bornholm. So it's not it's not it's not contradictional. It's a balance, of course, to do both things, but we think that we can do that. Yeah.
When you say we, it's the region who's leading that.
It's the municipality. Yeah, we are both a region and a municipality with the same border. Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Bill.
Yeah, so Nick is interested if you had some freedom in planning the buildings, and if there was the circular economy aspects considered, and the nature inclusiveness, and so what were the landscaping options?
The landscaping options were that they have to do something to kind of integrate the whole thing in the landscape. So there were different concepts. One is to kind of plant woods around to just kind of hide the thing, and another one was to split up and do the corridor, and another one was to maybe do a more artificial landscaping, like looking upon it as more like a city, or like like an urban setting. But we kind of ended up with the corridor and also a surrounding planting of more or less woods. We don't actually have the details on that yet, but only kind of the conceptual grip. And for the circular, yeah, for the building, for the facades, for instance, in Eginet, who's building, they really want to do wise choices that are good for circulation. But it's a challenge because it's, yeah, I don't know what it's called, but like they were initiating Gamtile. I don't know what's that. Burned like clay, burned clay tiles. Yeah, tiles. But the number of tiles, the amount of tiles is huge. So they think it's both not very good for the environment because it's a huge energy use for producing, and also it's not that easy to get that amount of tiles. So now we're discussing what are the alternatives and how would it look, and what is the circularity. And I think there's an issue also for about the lifetime of this site. They are telling us that it will only have a lifetime of 40 years. So do you then have to choose some materials that are kind of that short-lived, or could you imagine something else to utilize these building structures for? I think it's there are so many questions that we didn't get answers to yet. So it's definitely something that we are discussing, but it's not, the answers are not that easy.
Is this because
There's some
just a comment of it? Why is 40 years the lifetime?
I don't know quite, but the wind turbines on offshore, they won't live for longer than that. So, and this is built only to serve these wind turbines. So I guess that's the explanation, but actually I didn't get quite the answers about that.
There were a few more questions in the chat. I have one question myself as well, but Taylor, please.
Someone is asking about the trees, while the proposals were sort of without trees.
Or for the facades?
Yeah, the design.
The design?
Competition. The pictures that you were showing.
These?
Yeah, these ones, like lacking trees.
Oh, there are small trees, yeah.
Maybe you.
Yeah, I know as moderator, you're not supposed to ask questions, but I have one because I've been involved in the planning and of such converter stations myself in Netherlands, as AC/DC as well, or DC/AC actually. So
yeah,
direct current to alternating current. And one of the things, first of all, it's about location. That's really important, and then the design. Have you been involved in the choice of a location? Were there alternative locations considered?
Yeah. Yes.
Because because you're mostly showing design, but there.
Yes, but we did have a dialogue about different alternative locations, but it's not that easy to find a large spot like that. So not so many alternatives. But we did ask if could you go further into the island, further away from the coast, could you do this, that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
The other thing I learned is that what is often underestimated is the required area for construction and also the required infrastructure, both for during the construction, but also the cables and the transmission lines. I couldn't see them on your picture, but I'm sure that's something that you have studied. Can you say something about it?
Yes, it's also a challenge to get the transportation of these huge elements that's going inside the buildings, and it's going to be a challenge to land them in the harbor of Rønne because of the pressure from all the other projects, but also to transport overland. Yeah, so but there are they think they can solve it, but they will be building roads and yeah, they will be doing that. And also the cables, they have examined cable corridors and the coast where could they take into the cables from the sea.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Let's move also to the next presentation and Kirt, yeah, talking about, as I repeat, conceptualization and visualization of energy landscape. And I think you're going to have some very inspiring images to show and your approach to design and conceptualization. So the floor is yours, and we start a little bit later. So
yeah, okay.
So
thanks.
We have some time.
Should I just
yeah, let's just share the screen first.
Yeah,
you probably could do this as
okay.
well. But...
So while you're doing that, I can explain. I'm actually educated architect myself as well, specialized in industrial design. And I will show a little bit of the examples of what our company is working on, and also specific examples of how we work with the energy landscapes. The font types are a little bit distorted from this computer, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, does this work? Yeah, it works. Yeah, so you could say at Kirt Thomsen we are specialized in supporting the early stages of innovation, mostly in the energy sector, and creating visuals and images of future technologies and systems. Is there...
Sorry, the Zoom slide seems not to be changing.
No.
Yeah. Okay, then it's a mystery.
No, it changed.
It has a delay sometimes.
Or you can put the presentation mode and then share screen afterwards.
Try that.
Maybe, yeah.
Do that.
You can leave it like that.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, but I don't think the
stream's better.
Try to change slides just so that we can check.
Yeah,
how it works.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, so at Kirt Thomsen we are specialized in supporting those early stages of innovation, mostly to help imagine the futures of the technologies that are maybe 3, 5, 10 or more years out. We look a little bit holistically, and you could say changes.
Maybe do on this computer.
Yeah, I can just do it. No.
The PowerPoint and Zoom is an issue.
Yeah, okay. Yes, that changed. Yeah, so we'd say in the big tendencies is also that since I explained that we come from industrial design and very much product focused, I think there's something that is changing in these years that are going just here. It's called from human-centered design to more planning-centered design, but you could also call it from product to more system. That you simply need to think much more things into the system, but you still need to have a focus on the technology. And it's some of those roles that we have been taking in different projects over the years. We have 12 years existed as a company, so we have more than 400 projects on our track record. So we have many different cases and also many different roles. You could say that we have integrated. Here, there's a few examples visually of these technologies, both from future wind turbines that we're working with and the wave energy, as you see here. And all this, visualized from 3D, but also, these more system holistic overviews. And this is something else. But also a lot of it comes into like internal communication, and if it's especially in the big corporates, that's one part of our clients is big corporates. The other part is more like startups as well. Here you, for instance, see some 3D printing of the wind turbines. That 3D printing is not only on the lab, it's also out in industrial part. And of course, there's a lot of co-creating in these. The video here is just showing a lot of mixes of all the things. So you get like a brief idea of what we're doing. This is some real estate developer in New York as well that we've been working with in some energy systems for buildings. This is actually what started all airship project, which was a graduation project back in the day. That we are still working with, actually with some Swedish companies, so it's going into reality as well. But first I will tell about like the conceptualization of the energy landscapes. It's not like we get an assignment and do the conceptualization on itself, but we do help modify and actually are in very close dialogue with the engineers, often in some of these teams, and we help them make it tangible. What's the technology about here? It's like something about energy storage and molten salt, but also how does it fit in the system, right? So actually back to some of what the Swedish landscape architects you were talking about as well, to have this systematic approach, but that's also important for these products. Then part of the project actually Mads down there in European energy, we've been helping throughout some years, and you could say it's being part of the conceptualization process, but it's not always that we do a lot of conceptualization ourselves, but we help giving birth to the ideas and making it very tangible, and also in that process maybe giving some extra questions that was not thought about in the process and help making that visible as well, and maybe to communicate it in different ways. These are some other communications that were done some years ago about how to merge these wetlands and which benefits to get out of it. This visualization as well as Mads was showing, that it's not site specific, but still it is like some part of some render and merged into some photo things. But the whole purpose is, of course, to be able to communicate to future clients as well as stakeholders, as politicians or other collaboration partners, sub-suppliers, and so on. These are some other examples as well, but since Mads already showed them, I will not go too much in that. But maybe highlighting that it is, since we're coming from the architectural world, it is CAD programs, and so it's 3D and it's 2D that we work with, and we're not limited to like that toolbox in itself, but we try to visualize it in the best and most impactful way. And here it's more about making it look, you could say, close to reality. Yeah, these were some other ones. Maybe I can then support the Mass's presentation actually by how it might look if you go more south down in Europe. And here it's somewhere in France, or I think Spain maybe even, with lavender fields would be a great fit as well. And of course, that's what we don't think about as citizens of the 21st century, that of course these lavender fields is also sort of an industrialization of our modern societies. It's not like wild nature as such, but we tend to see it as idyllic landscapes, but maybe we should actually try to reconfigure our minds of what is the landscape of our modern society. Yeah, again, back to a lot of the communication, we work in aspects of these biodiversity as well, and see big other corporates. This is one of the Danish energy utilities that are focusing a lot of developing wind farms around the globe, and also, of course, trying to enhance biodiversity. And here it's about if we can regrow coral, so actually reusing the structure that you already put in place that was not there, but that could actually benefit from creating good habitats for coral. So that's like a testing project that is going on in Thailand at the moment. And this is like a one-page poster that we have been developing for some of like the scientists and PhD people that have been involved, and then that they are communicating to more like peers as like-minded. So you also see it's very detailed. So it is more like a peer-to-peer communication. But of course, there's other aspects of this coexistence as well. Yeah, without going too much depth in that one. Yeah, still within this conceptualization, I've showed you a lot of the examples that have a tendency to show more in correlation with the landscapes and so on. But I think I just wanted to show you some examples where since it is a lot of the technology developers that we also work with, it is of course taking like the base from the technology in itself and how you can explain that. But also, of course, how it might look into to the landscape as such. For instance, this project that we have been involved in, they only had like simple CAD drawings from the engineering programs. And actually, when we helped them do these visualizations, for the first time, they actually got like a shared image of how their technology might look. And they were sort of like, yeah, of course, positively surprised, but it's also helping generate like a shared image in the team and a stronger connection to what you're actually developing. Yeah, we did several clips for them, but these are just a bit of a few ones. Yeah. So yeah, again, a few clips from some more technology-based things, and since they're going in stages, they often don't have like those prototypes out in the real environments before maybe 5 years down the line, sometimes even 10 years when it comes to offshore wind turbines. So it can help create like these images also for investors or some of these other key stakeholders. Yeah, this one never became anything, but it's also from European Energy. That was a project about trying to integrate actually like coastal protection and energy production in itself. But yeah, maybe it's too early. Maybe we need some cities to get flooded before it get relevant. But yeah.
So it's solar panels as well.
Yeah, this is actually floating solar that you have in there, and then you have accumulated heat down in these ponds, and you use the electricity from the wind turbines and the solar to heat up also this that you then can use for both district heating and district cooling. So it's sort of considered as a big battery in a way, which is why it was called the giga storage, the concept. And yeah, it's supposed to emulate like some of the coastal cities in Denmark as well. And try to put a little bit of landscape quality by some other functions in, but it was not really overall want to demonstrate that it could have the function. And again, this is of course a concept, it's not like site specific, but it should be able to then be put on some specific sites. Yeah, go to the next one. All the time when we work with these conceptualizations, we try to take the mind of what is the message and the key stakeholders that you are. Did I draw that line? Then I did that. But yeah, so sometimes it's a lot about alignment internally in the groups, getting a shared language, getting a shared vision, and so on, especially in those big corporates, as I mentioned. But it's also about aligning up and down and getting commitments of maybe continuing with some projects. And it's also about, you could say, aligning and getting co-ownership with others outside. And here we just put like investors and customers and so on, but of course it's also citizens in other ones. Yes, this is an example from internal alignment. This is actually a CEO of the big energy utility speaking with a technical people. And there's a lot of these dialogues that are going on that is very important for getting the technologies out, but also projects and strategies. Yeah, here you see it's more like between the former French president and this floating wind turbine that was supposed to take place as well. But behind all these visualization and the tools that we provide is of course the mindset that we put into it, the holistic one, the design thinking approach. So there is also putting requirements, aspects between what we call like a micro and macro perspective, as the technology, the value chain, the larger context, trying to put all these things into a mix that then becomes also part of the visualization. So that you as a client, you get a visualization, but you actually get much more in the process, and which is also part of the reason why we keep on working with our clients. So site visualizations, the brief from Selina was that how we work with visualization and how we make it look real in the landscape. The former visualizations you saw with the conceptualization is of course connected to innovation in technology development and so on. So it's more conceptual why it was put there. But when you see these ones, you could say you're going more into site developments, as it's you're not so much in technology development anymore. You're like site-specific projects. But there you also have, of course, different stages, and that you know much more about yourself as well, being landscape architects. But that's where we work closely with some of these energy utilities. This also being European energy, but where we don't assist so much in the layout process as such as the design of the solar park, but we help visualize it from different viewpoints. So you see it here that it's being, you can see it slightly being put over there. And this is one example. This is another one, even from actually an earlier stage, where it's just like a photo by an iPhone, basically. I think the previous one was more like from a set camera where we didn't have like specific information, so we know much more precise. This is more approximately visualization. This is a very precise also visualization based from some what are called land inspector. Yeah, is that the international name? Yeah, those with the cameras out in the field. And so they have very specific tools, and we get very precise photos that we then create the visualization based on. And solar cells are a little bit special because there's not any specific software where you can visualize those as you do have in wind turbines. And also if you come to curved landscape and so on. So, and then here you see the curved landscape. The red part is part that you actually cannot see, but you also need to use it as for judgment of how much value decrease your property is decreasing, and then the developer needs to pay that. So it's also part of the visualization purpose. Some other visualizations, these are even like from Google Maps as the photos, but then we visualize them on top of them. But it still needs to be somehow precise, but we help doing that as well. And you can see I think we also visualize the trees there. So it's actually, I think it's the same view. Exactly. So that you see it after 5 years or how much it takes to grow. These are only trees. Only trees visualization. It's a little bit hard to see what's before and after. So all those ones that I just saw you there, you could say it's a little bit earlier stage of the site development. This next one I'm going to show you here, that's when you have like a developer maybe have one like the tender and everything, but you need to do like environmental assessments and so on. And that's where we helped actually in the second stage of 2 wind farms out of the west coast of Denmark to help them visualize, because they actually got declined in the first stage. It was like a huge resistance from the local people living there. Well, actually not living there permanently, because it was mostly the summer house. The spare time house owners that had like a big resistance against these wind turbines and put everything in place to put down the project. And the visualizations were actually part of it. That you could say there was wrong visualizations that they had also put out that helped also in strengthening that process. So that was why we got involved in this process for the second part, for the second stage, to make it, because of course Vattenfall, who was the developer here, they really wanted to make sure that it went through in the second stage. So they created like a new layout, and we helped create visualizations actually based on the same photo points as was done in phase 1. You could say when doing these visualizations, there's of course this dispute between how the eye looks and perceive and how the camera is taking the photos as precise as possible. And the camera is more like this around 50mm lens, where you only get a restricted area of what the eye actually perceive, right? And that's of course also putting into what movement in the landscape, and which media do you use? Are you using stills, or are you using animation and so on? And can you interact with these? So all those things, and sorry for it being in Danish, but all these things, of course, impacts also how the visualization is perceived versus how the reality might look afterwards. And that's what we want to get as close to as possible. How does it actually look and is perceived in reality afterwards? And here we work together with like this landscape inspector company again. So they created like a very precise photos with measure points as well, and we got all these data together with as like data files and in the photos specifically, and then the technique is that we then try to make a panorama, so that you stitch these things together, but still have the precision of these GPS points, so that we actually make sure that that sizes fit. yeah, so we go through like a long process to make sure that everything fits with this one, and that the panorama is also fitting. And the end result is something like this. It might be a little bit hard to see the wind turbines here. So I created like a zoom in here. But where you see, we also need to then adapt for, you might have some fog and like small clouds in the background. So then we need to distort like some of the wind turbines so that you actually perceive it in the right way. And then we also have created different viewpoints, whether it's a night or a sunset and gray weather and so on, so that you get these different aspects. So that was the first part, and it got approved to go into the second part. And you could say this was only 12 photo points we did this with. Well, it was for 2 sites, so it was ×2 kind of. But then the second stage, or like the final stage, where you have like this value decrease or value devaluation, compensation for loss of value, I think it's called. We had like almost 300 reports that we had to create. So we did a different technique. So we did actually collaborate with this land inspector company, they put it through like the WindPro program, as it's called, the software. So they get the first stage where you get like the sizes right and everything. So it's much faster than what we do it. But then we did like a Photoshop, you could say, afterwards, and make sure that you have these adjustments, and also that we had like a gray line, so it was very easy to see where the turbines was here, where you cannot see all of them through the trees, but also here as well. So you have these things, and then you have the night visualizations. Again, the projector here is of course misinterpreting the dots.
You see it more.
Yeah, and also then you have them blinking, so of course that also get a different perception on. So yeah, but we try to make it somewhere in between. So, and then I was supposed to talk about how do you think it's moving forward. Yeah, it's 1 minute, and I think it's much more about like these collaborative processes, because there's much more technologies coming into it, not only wind turbines and solar and so on. And that's what we see in these new projects, that you have wind and solar, but you also have like e-fuels, and you have bio, and it's coming into a new type of fuels and so on. So yeah, I'm just skipping through some of these quickly, but again, of course, there's different communication means. This also being sort of energy storage and power to X plan, where this is just like maybe a 10th part of the plant, because the rest is underground in what you call big salt caverns. I think it's the English word, but big voids in the underground where you then put things. Yeah, I think there's much more about helping making people also access the future. This one will not, but it's more how we work also in between art and strategy. The airship project that I'm not telling so much about here. But yeah, I think these are some points I listed up here that need to be considered much more going forward. Understanding the impact of these energy landscapes, getting this holistic view of the zoom in, zoom out, the micro macro, as I talked about, but also new collaboration methods where you involve all the stakeholders and so on, being much more open. And of course, I think much more storytelling. Communication cannot be underestimated in this transition if it needs to go as fast as everybody is aiming for. Yes, so that was my slides.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it's time for questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you for a very engaging presentation. I'm just wondering, since you now have been operating for 12 years, I'm sure that you also have some possibilities for evaluating your visualizations against realization. So is that something you could say something about? Like, well, you did visualization, now you see the results. What's your,
it's you could say the majority of the work that we're doing is in that technology development, of course. So it is more like the general one than the site-specific visualizations that we're doing most of it. And yeah, I think they come pretty close to reality. Of course, again, as you see in some of the visualization, not all of them are like realistic, or have to be. Some are more generic or diagrammatic and so on. So of course, those one we cannot like judge up against. But yeah, I think a lot of them is coming towards yeah. Of course, some of them are also transforming throughout the way, right? That we're helping giving birth or like stimulating, boosting a process, and then maybe it transforms or like take a different shape and so on. So actually, yeah, we have not done like a big evaluation actually of that.
But it would be interesting since it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
For convincing and communicating.
Yeah.
Making decisions.
And definitely we will do that with these two, Vesterhav Nord and Syd, because they're being installed right now. They're putting the foundation in place right now, and I think it's by next year they're up running. Yeah, outside of Ringkøbing in Bornholm. Yeah.
So, other questions on this?
I heard from other Danes in the past that you have high fences around all the solar parks, but you didn't have any fences.
No, as you saw it on some of the visualizations that we had, not fences, but the tree, as like the bushes and so on. So I could have shown that often when we do those solar visualization, then we do it like by installation a year after, and then like 3-5 years after when you have like full. So
I think the fences would be good to have a more realistic picture.
No, but we do from if we have like 3 viewpoints, then we also make sure to have 3 situations, as 3 times of each viewpoint. I just didn't show that in those images. No. But that was year 0. Yeah. But yeah, some of the other ones did have bushes. But of course, then it's hard to see what's after and before if you only have like the full bushes. But we do that, yeah.
There were a few questions in the chat. Do you want
a comment?
Or comment in the chat? Yeah.
Nick is commenting that it's really great that you have the turbines moving, because it gives so much more about the perception of the landscape, especially when you are comparing the 2 and 3 rotor turbines. It's such a difference. So that's a comment.
Yeah. And it's something that we try to integrate or pitch in, that with these citizen meetings, as you have in these big projects, that you maybe start to use other tools as well as VR or videos and so on. But often there's not the budgets to do that, so we just help them focus on the main visualizations, the stills.
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So Inda, and then Rosalina. Yeah.
I would ask, maybe you gave a lot of examples, but maybe you could remember some more precise or whatever, that how by your conceptualization and working together, that with design thinking, you influence actually result. You have some good examples or memories on that.
Yeah, but that's one of the. Let's see if I can jump in this one, for instance. So, for instance, this this energy storage. No, okay, it's not jumping. But anyway, we have some of those where, for instance, the energy storage of molten salt. One of the examples I showed in the beginning. There was basically nothing as data. It didn't have like any CAD models or anything like that. And they were mostly focusing on like how to preserve like the salt in high heat. So we helped them actually bring out like questions about, okay, maybe which size tanks do you need? How long time does it need to be stored actually for which use cases and so on? and also how might it look in different locations and put up versus whether you're like in an industry or you're maybe in an energy island or you're connected to district heat and so on. So actually helping making them consider those things, you could say.
And in these teams, was there architects, landscape architects, designers beside your team?
Yeah,
and engineers.
Yeah, when it comes to in the technology development, no, but in the site-specific projects, yeah, there's often, but not in the beginning, not in those first stages. So then it comes later on. And yeah, the ones that also help to choose or verify the photo points for these wind turbine sites I showed, that was like a landscape architect company, WSP, I think they call, or something like that. Yeah, they're bigger, right? Yeah, so they were involved in that and helping verify also that it was the right ways to view and get different situations of the landscape. But yeah, I think it could be interesting, and also we would like to get much more like in a iteration process, you could say, with MES and some of the developers there. But I think often it's just so much considered about economies, and there's not necessarily like a lot of layout possibilities if it comes to wind farms or solar farms and so on. So there's a lot of data being put into that rather than, you could say, perception and design viewpoints. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We move on to the discussion. But thanks again for your presentation and for being here. Also looking forward for any collaboration with designers in your projects. I will share my screen. And then tell what's next on the program. So when we thought about this workshop, it doesn't show. Can you? Wait, something is stopping. I can try again. Just having some hiccups. Now we are. Yeah, now it works. When we thought about organizing a workshop, we felt most of all it's important not just to get inspiration and different perspectives and learn from that, but also to work together and discuss what we have been hearing. So even though it's the end of the day, I would maybe need some exercise, actually, I would recommend. We're going to break in smaller groups. I'll briefly introduce how we are planning to do that, to talk about the topic of today, and common ground for energy landscapes. Briefly, this is the schedule. So we have little over an hour for discussion, and then we get back here for conclusions and wrapping up. So what we had thought, now this doesn't move here, there we are. We'll have this meeting room, and we have breakout rooms for the online participants. Around 10 participants per person. That seems like a workable size, or at least a maximum size for a good discussion. Could be less as well. I hope that we can split in this room by ourselves, that we don't have to tell you to which group you go. I can suggest maybe that every other person actually goes to another group. So
one group will be just outside here, one group will stay here.
One group will stay in the room and the other room will
just
go
outside.
to the standing table. And I think, just quickly counting, we are 2 groups here.
Yeah.
And then there will be, for the online participants, there will be, will automatically assign the breakout rooms. So hope you have a nice mixture of each. Sorry. I want to ask you, we're not gonna record this. We're not gonna report this extensively, but please elect one person who takes notes. And on top of that, we'd like to ask you to use Padlet for collaboration. So after this 1 hour discussion, we'll be back around 4:30, and we hope that you can either during your talk or at the end put your ideas and thoughts together on this Padlet. And we have one Padlet for everyone. So we hope that all the ideas, not for each group, but come together on this Padlet. And everyone can edit. So people online, everyone who logged into Zoom or logged into the link, we'll share the link also in the chat. And that will be the outcome for today. Let's see if we can draw overall conclusions, but I hope at least we get a lot of ideas and inspiration, texts, links, suggestions, drawings, anything you like. It's possible. So, how to use Padlet? Let's go to the link, and then I should also share it actually in the chat. There it is. Can you still see my screen? Yeah.
Well, we have 2 questions that we want that we have already put on the online thing, and which will hopefully guide us in putting some notes in the discussion. And
quickly, sorry, I forgot about it. Quickly, the 2 questions that for today's actually the topic we started with: what is the most important topic, the most topical issue concerning energy landscapes? And then let's think of problems and solutions. So what could be possible solutions, actions, guidelines, planning, design practices, anything you name it, or any other methods? I forgot about that, sorry.
Oh, no worries, it's right here on the screen. And when you click on the Padlet link, you get to this page. And basically as a group, we hope that, that every group will just start clicking on the plus. I just use these. And then you can just name your group, group 1, or put names or whatever. And then you can add files or texts, and that could be the trace and notes of your discussion for today's discussion in groups. And then whenever you're done, I do just an example. It gets published and everyone can see it. Everyone who has access to the Padlet, so also online people would be able to also read some of the group's discussion. I think it's easier if every group keep one post so that we have it gathered, but you're also welcome to do several. I mean, if you have pictures or more content.
You want to show how that works? Or
but I'm showing on the screen, you just press the plus, and then it's quite intuitive. You can put a picture, a link, add a file, put the name of who is participating in the group, and then write notes and conclusions. Basically, that's it.
That's it, yeah.
Whenever you come to this link, you get to this webpage, and this is what we have. We would like the groups to keep the notes organized under the questions, but of course, if you have discussed other things, you're welcome to put more under this section. I can also eventually create another section if there are other subjects discussed or anything else, but I think you can actually do it also yourself, I think. No, maybe not. Yeah, that's it. So that's just for keeping a trace afterward, because tomorrow we are actually reworking everything we've learned and discussed today, and hopefully we can put that into production of even more clever thoughts.
Yeah. So this is also where we end the recording.
Yeah.
This will be published later. So thank you for attending, and hope you enjoyed. And we did enjoy, I can say, and we're going to continue with what we have been hearing so far. Okay, let's go to the breakout rooms.
Maybe I just need to say that each group has to open a Padlet on a computer and do that.
One or more.
Yeah. It wasn't clear.
Several of us are
inside. So if you put us in the breakout room, if you jump in, so
maybe we
we
should
now are leaving.
Yeah, because I guess we will do so that
I think it solved itself.
It's so self.
Yeah, so at least the ones who are inside.
Okay.
So the remaining parts, probably the group is not so big.
Maybe we can move.
It seems more like a third group.
Or move some people.
We can probably manage by removing people out of some.
That's just
So yeah, I guess in-person people will meet in person and online people.